across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, a lot of tiffin going on this afternoon, I can tell you that much. Man alive, we are busy at this end. Absolutely chocker. Welcome to the home of common sense. It's been interesting in the last 24 hours, the Gary Neville nonsense, sparking a bit of a backlash, of course, after ordering the removal of a Union flag from his £400 million construction site, criticising its divisive use by angry, middle-aged white men. You've heard all the story now. Workers accusing him of being unpatriotic, while Neville defended the stance, claiming he opposes the flag being used negatively. Is that right, Gaza? Well, he's not alone. He's been joined by someone else in his tirade against normality. More on that in a couple of moments. Also this afternoon, 2 years on from the October 7th attacks, Keir Starmer has condemned pro-Palestinian protests taking place today as un-British, warning they incite hatred and exploit tensions to target Jewish communities. He highlighted Jewish fears amid rising anti-Semitism and called for respect and safety for all amidst the ongoing conflicts. It does, perhaps not everybody's first thought, very much tie in with that first issue of flags. I'll explain why in just a moment. And as you've heard throughout the course of this morning, Scotland Yard have dismantled a gang exporting 40,000 stolen UK phones annually in a £70 million theft operation. Raids led to 46 arrests and 2,000 recovered phones as police urged Apple to introduce a kill switch to combat the growing epidemic of phone thefts. You'd think by now. There's obviously a reason why they don't have the kill switch, because you hit it accidentally or something and everything's gone, I guess. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk, 0344 499 1000. Let me just ask the question like this. What are your reasons for flying the flag? What is your thinking? Or what are your reasons for enjoying seeing others fly the flag? You could look at it in that respect. When you look at the flag of this country, and I'm talking about the Union flag here, as distinct from the Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, English flags. But what does the Union, what does it symbolise to you? What does it mean? Do you feel instant symbolism? Do you feel instant patriotism? What's the sense you get when you see the Union flag for you? And if you fly one, just run over the reasons, if you would, just so we can maybe begin the educational process of Gary Neville, if nothing else. The recent flag protests, and by the way, they're not really protests. This is how I see it, and feel free to agree or disagree on this. I think they're almighty messages to our leaders to remind them of what country they are running and what values we hold. I mean, if you go to some parts of this country, you'd be forgiven for thinking, frankly, you were in the middle of Gaza, looking at the amount of Palestinian flags that are out there right now. Gary Neville, as we know, the Snootmeister, multi-millionaire left-wing half-wit, seems to think only angry white men are flying a flag. It's only angry white men. Boy, does this man miss the point. Does he need an education? Let me just bring you migrant hotels, grooming gangs and anti-Israel protests are all not just good and valid, but possibly crucial reasons to remind our political masters who we are, what we stand for, what British values are. So how do you see the purpose of the flag? And by the way, no sooner had half-wit Gaza and his flag rant of doom taken place, enter half-wit number two. This is a former Loose Women panellist, the bastion of wisdom and journalistic integrity, of course, that programme. She's pitched up as well. She said this.
You see a lot of men on marches that want these flags up. They are white, angry men who are dissatisfied with their own lives, and so the only way they can do it is by going out and being like that. That's what I see on a lot of these.
That's what I see on a lot of these, because she's obviously there for all of them. That's her view. She's essentially just repeating the Gary Neville line again. There it is. She also said that it's mostly saddos with beer bellies doing this. She said that while she's patriotic, the flag is divisive. Yes, It is dividing us from anti-Semitism, illegal immigration, industrial scale sexual abuse from people who shouldn't even be in this country. It's meant to make a dividing point. Forget looking after or protecting them. What about us? What about our citizens? That's the point of all of this. It's not about colour or race, religion or gender. It's a message to people like Starmer. British people are feeling ignored, left behind, socially demoted. And it's for those reasons, I sense, that people are raising flags. Now, I know not everybody is a good flag raiser. Sticking a flag on a manky old discarded shop window with blue tack doesn't really cut it. I want my flags to look nice, symmetrical, beautifully raised and displayed. Maybe that's just a bit of OCD kicking in. But for you, what are the reasons for flying the flag, and what is your sense when you see that around the country there are many people putting flags up that were never there before? Your response to that, 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Isabel Oakeshott is back with us, Talk's international editor. Isabel, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Well, I don't have a flag outside my home, but where I have a little holiday home on the Isle of Wight, lots of people fly flags, and I'd love to put one, on a proper mast. I think that flagpole or whatever you want to call it, I think that would be a great thing. And you were asking the question, why do people fly flags? And I think it is the opposite of division, actually. It's about, this is what brings us together. This is who we are. And it's almost a kind of primal thing. When countries try to stake out new territory, for example, if they're, I don't know, going to space or even going to the bits of the underwater, the ocean, they will plant a flag there. And so there's something pretty simple and primal about that. And I feel very sad that this has become so incredibly political. It should be pretty simple. I mean, here where I am today in the United Arab Emirates, they have something called Flag Day. And you see enormous flags covering entire buildings, sky-rise buildings that are covered in huge flags of the United Arab Emirates. And that is a great source of pride, of celebration and of joy. Why can't we have something like that?
Yeah, it's curious, isn't it, that we've got to this place where you sort of, there are people kind of tacitly apologising for raising the flag, and people talking about how it makes them feel uncomfortable, which I find a curious response to a flag.
I mean, come on, go away. Honestly, if you feel uncomfortable by the British flag, then you really are in the wrong place, whether you're British or whatever else you may be. This just makes me think, which do you prefer, Westminster or Davos? Maybe there are people that would be more comfortable with the EU flag. I mean, in my home village, in my hometown in the Cotswolds, believe it or not, there are still people flying EU flags. There is a cohort of our population that still can't get over it.
That's a bit bizarre, isn't it? I mean, that would have been bizarre when we were in the EU, frankly, let alone when we're not in it.
They're still there, Ian. I'm going to have to get a picture next time I'm around.
Definitely, yeah. Well,
there's actual EU bunting. There's still EU bunting in the village along people's railings.
You've got to go out your way to buy that stuff, haven't you? You've got to really source it. That's the point.
Yeah, what's it all about?
And I also find it odd, I made the point at the beginning, Isabel, that I think that there is a certain sense that sort of British identity has somewhat been relegated in some areas of our political landscape, as it were, and I think we see it with that sense of, with immigration. Why would it be that the feelings of locals were relegated in comparison to the feelings of people that illegally came to the UK and somehow found themselves staying in a hotel? I think there's that going on as well. I think of the anti-Semitism march, or what are meant to be pro-Palestine, but actually anti-Israel, anti-Jewish marches, whatever you want to call them, particularly on a day like today, particularly after what happened in Manchester. I think that's another example. We don't want these people anywhere near this country. They don't represent our values. They're not people who, I would imagine the organisers behind this are probably not even British. I mean, what is going on when you can walk through a town and find loads of Palestinian flags, but you can't stick up a Union flag?
I mean, I've got a real problem with that. I mean, I'm actually quite hard line on this stuff. I think things have got so bad in our country that actually we've got to a point where we should ban the flying of foreign flags. And that's an extreme thing to say. I mean, there are a number of countries around the world, including in Western countries, that do this because for the very reason that they don't want to end up where the UK has ended up, where streets are a sea of foreign flags. It's really important in a country that everybody is bound together on the same side, as it were. And I think that's it, that is why multiculturalism has failed in the UK, because there is not a common sense of these are the rules and this is who we are and we're all signing up to it. And the reason that's happened is because of this obsession with the word tolerance and the word diversity. And both of those things on the face of it are a good thing. You know, tolerance is a good thing, of course it is. Diversity is a good thing. But if you take it so far that you're allowing everybody to be tolerant of everything, and you're suggesting that any form, all behaviours are okay, and again that diversity becomes so wholesale that there isn't actually much that binds people together, then you've got a problem. Multiculturalism only works if everybody is signed up to something that brings
100%, and mostly America have done that rather well over the years. I mean, they clearly have a underbelly of issues going on, maybe for other reasons. But we'll continue to talk about the flag issue here this afternoon, and asking the question for those who fly them or those who enjoy seeing them flown, what are your reasons for flying the flag? Our lines are open. Let's move to this story, Isabel. Today, of course, marks 2 years since the Hamas attack on Israel. 1,200 people killed, 251 taken hostage. This was a bloodbath. It was carnage. It was horrific. The worst thing Israel has seen in this sense. Keir Starmer has, I was about to say to his credit, can we say that, told students not to take part in un-British protests today. One woman was caught yesterday cutting down October 7th ribbons from an area. Let's have a listen to this.
I never understand these people who are video people. What's your name? What's your name? Feel so proud of yourself. What's your name?
You're not going to do this.
Not going to do what?
I'm not committing a crime.
Yes, you are.
You're doing something that is...
I am, then call the police. You call the police and you let them know that you have an issue with this.
You disgusting little human being. You're disgusting.
I think condoning genocide is disgusting.
Oh, yeah, so we support genocide. Oh, yes.
And so...
Yeah, sure.
Because that's what this is.
No, it's not.
What? Ribbons for people who have been imprisoned, abducted, Yeah, we're going to show the world what you're doing. You're going to be famous.
Yeah, you would love that.
I'm a journalist. I work for a national newspaper. This is going straight to the Daily Telegraph.
Straight around the world as well, Isabel. I would imagine the girl responsible for that is probably in hiding right now. I didn't understand it when we saw, it was posters, wasn't it, of hostages we saw. There was a flurry of people taking them down. I couldn't make that fit anywhere within the story here. Why would somebody feel compelled to take down ribbons in this case that are there to commemorate and remember people who have died or been taken hostage? At what point would your brain take you there?
Well, I just don't think these people really exercise their brains very much. You know, there's a fundamental lack of humanity there. It's not like those people that have been taken hostage were anything other than innocent people. You know, they're not politicians. They're not responsible for the decisions that fueled whatever hatred and mad vengeance was in the hearts of those Hamas terrorists when they did what they did. Those people bear no responsibility for that. They were innocent, many of them very young people who are pawns in a much bigger political game. And there's got to be something very wrong with a citizen like the lady that we saw there, who somehow thinks that those people, those victims, because that's what they are victims of a horrible power play in that part of the Middle East, and it's an ideological battle of viewpoints that just aren't going to ever match up. You know, if your agenda is the annihilation of Israel, it's just never going to be achievable. Those people absolutely should be remembered at this time, and I'm only sorry that we couldn't see the face of that young woman, because I'd like to know exactly who she is.
I think she has now been sort of plastered over a fair amount of news outlets who have managed to, you know, do a little bit of digging and found a picture of her. What I don't understand, I mean, two things can be right, or you can have two views. So if you are very against Israel's response on this, you're allowed to have that view. If you believe they've overplayed it in terms of defence, you're allowed to have that view. Simultaneously, you can also have the view that what happened on October the 7th, by any standard, was horrendous, it was mortifying, it was tragic, it was unprecedented, it was all of those things. Little kids and innocents and children taken hostage, many not returning, some we know already dead. You can have both of those views. Which bit of that eludes somebody like this girl taking the ribbons down?
And actually plenty of people in politics and plenty of ordinary people who are not wanting to be part of the political debate have those views. Correct. It's not actually difficult. You know, I don't actually think any of this is that binary. I mean, of course, we know that Hamas started this, and what they did on October the 7th was utterly unforgivable and unforgettable, and, you know, no one can ever make any excuse for it. But at the same time, you know, we can also be moved by pictures of children in Gaza being killed. Now, maybe that they are being used as human shields, but it's equally the case that Israel, whilst it certainly tries not to kill civilians and innocent children, sometimes, you know, is responsible for bombardments or gunfire that does kill little ones. And we can feel sad about that too. These things are not impossible for the human heart to accommodate both at the same time, but evidently they are for that lady.
Indeed. Isabel, stay with us. More stories still to come. And, of course, we're taking your response and calls and comments on the flag. I think it's I genuinely believe, to me, one of the reasons, the symbolism of the flag right now, why the necessity or the need for some to want to put them up is it's for many reasons, of course, and individuals might have their own reasons, but I do think when we're seeing kind of anti-Israel protests today and students who know jack about this area, I reckon if you ask them any aspect of Middle Eastern, particularly Israeli, Gazan history, for example, would be utterly clueless. But you might just think you put the handbrake on a day like today. You might have thought that after the terrorist attack on a synagogue in this country last week. But we don't have that, and we have the authorities giving the green light for these protests. I think flying the flag in part is to go, hello, you do know where we are, everybody. This is the United Kingdom, and we want the government sometimes to just reflect that, maybe. Not too much to ask. 0344 499 1000, 20 past 1, this is Talk.
You're still wearing the shirt today, though, so obviously it hasn't traumatised you too much.
No, it hasn't traumatised me at all, to be honest. I saw the funny side of it when I was watching the videos, but when I was sitting in that cabin, at that time it wasn't so funny. Like, I was holding the window shut because the window on the driver's side is meant to lock from the inside, right, but it didn't. So I was literally holding it shut. You can see on the video there, I'm talking to someone who's opened it from the outside, right, briefly, and then I'm holding it shut afterwards.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Comes from Neil, who says if you look at the origins of flags and emblems before then they were often used as rally points in battles. You'll have seen the wooden eagles of poles that were used by centurions in the Roman army. Well, again, they were points to rally to during a battle when the time was right. Fast forward to 2025, the UK, and I think we're seeing the same thing. Brits today are flying the Union in St George's Cross for exactly the same reasons. These individuals feel embattled and are looking for like-minded individuals to rally around them. I think there is that. I think, to me, there's also just a very obvious message to our government. You know, don't forget what country you are running here and the people within it and the values and all that has gone before it. And yes, you can have smart words like diversity flowing around the place. The average person doesn't give a hoot whether you're black, white, brown or something else. But just remember, this is Britain, and it's kind of that simple. And look after us as well, because we pay our taxes for a bit of that. And when a bunch of people who we have no idea who they are turn up at hotels, 200 young men, average age 23, no idea where they came from, their backstory or anything, and their values are put ahead of our values and concerns, there's a problem. When you can walk around chanting anti-Semitic abuse with swastikas on your T-shirt, then there's a problem. So yeah, stick a flag up, remind Keir Starmer and others who we are. This is who you're meant to be looking after, not 200 people who hate Jews on a high street 7 hours after a terrorist attack. It's really quite simple. Isabel Oakeshott is with us. We're looking at the big stories of the day. Interesting one, this, Isabel. No big surprise when it comes to phone theft, because we're all aware that it's a massive problem in this country at the moment, but it is interesting to see it encapsulated into this particular story. The gang behind 40% of UK phone robberies has been busted in a major sting. So there were 300 officers who stormed 28 London homes in the dead of night. You can only imagine how this panned out, taking down pickpockets, fueling a snatch theft epidemic. Even liberal Americans are noticing London's crime chaos. Have a little listen to this.
After this ride on the London Tube, I got a whole new perspective. Say what you want about Trump, you all know I voted for Biden and voted for Harris. I gotta be honest with you, I'm making the swing fast. There's a lot of things going on in the world, a lot of things that I'm seeing in Europe, a lot of things that I'm seeing in London. Strike up a nice conversation with a good guy in London. He's talking, he's like, listen, there's a lot of the British people, a lot of people in London, for all his shortcomings, they want Trump here because the crime is out of control, immigration is out of control. Every single person has told me, don't walk with your phone out, don't wear a watch in Mayfair, don't do it. Even right now, I'm about to turn a corner on the street, I got to worry about holding my phone because some moron might come by on an e-bike, try and grab it. Obviously, I'll run his ass down, you know this. But what's going on across the world is a real problem.
There it is, putting it on the line for you, Isabel. I think he spoke a lot of, to coin that horrible phrase, he spoke a lot of people's truths.
I'm so embarrassed that our country is developing this reputation, and I absolutely hear it. I travel a lot into all sorts of interesting places, and you know this word has spread about the state of London, and well done to the police. You know, I heard Peter Blexley, former police officer, on Mike Graham's show this morning, you know, praising what actually amounted to good old-fashioned policing. I think they had some help from journalists. We like to do that where we can. And they actually did a proper job on this. Yeah. And I don't know, is it going to make any difference to the overall picture? Well, again, Peter Blexley was saying supply and demand, like these things always are. You know, great that they've managed to tackle this with this one very, very big criminal operation. But clearly it is still rife, and it would be neat, wouldn't it, if you could just sort of kill off your phone if it got stolen. But I guess the hard drive, the sort of hard piece of kit still does have quite the value.
Indeed, and there's the problem. And there's lots of calls for having a kill switch on the phone. I think there's various kind of logistical reasons why some phone companies don't do that, because you might inadvertently think you've lost your phone and you haven't lost your phone. Whatever the reason is, it's out of control. It's just another example of a sort of lawlessness that is snaking its way around the place. We'd be failing, Isabel, if we didn't talk about the Tory party conference. You might have heard about it. There's a lot of Tories, or some, who are up there in Manchester. Let's have a listen to Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick. He spoke this morning. Let's have a little listen to what he had to say. In fact, we haven't got that clip right now, but we know that he's criticised Lord Hermer at the Conservative Party conference, accusing me of being a useful idiot for our enemies. He's talked about activist judges and things like that. He's making a lot of inroads, it seems, Jenrick. Many saying he's clearly auditioning for the role of leader. He did do a little bit of odd puppetry with a judge's wig, which never usually ends well when politicians do that. In fairness, I haven't fully heard the clip. I just saw the visuals of it. But what are we making of the overarching impact of the most successful political party in global democratic history?
Yeah, well, I, as people can probably tell, I'm not actually at the Tory party conference. I have been to so many of these in my time, and from what I've heard, predictably enough, it's a pretty depressing atmosphere up there. We've seen pictures of genuinely pretty empty auditoriums for keynote speeches. These aren't just clever, scurrilous camera angles by mischief makers. These were genuinely pretty deserted halls, and it must be awful for them. Sorry, I don't want to sound as if I'm sympathetic, because I'm not. As far as I'm concerned, these are the people that have destroyed our country to the point we are where we are now. But there they are, giving it their best shot, and then on this very day, more than a dozen Tory councillors have defected to Reform, again overshadowing that Tory message. Now, I do think, to give Robert Jenrick his due, he's a bit more lively, isn't he? He's a bit more engaging, and he knows what a news story is. So he came out with this thing today. I think he's named and shamed some 35 he sort of depicts as activist judges. Yeah. He basically is characterising, not in these words, but along the lines of that famous Daily Mail headline, "Enemies of the People." And this is the kind of opposition that the Tory party needs to be doing all day, every day. And it's not just up to Robert Jenrick to try to keep the whole show on the road, and that's very much how it looks, I think, at the moment.
Indeed. Listen, Isabel, thank you very much for your time. Lots more to talk about. We didn't get through it all. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. Over to you on all of this. 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on the big stories and flags in particular. This is really fascinating. It's also boiling my spuds right now when I see or hear people like Gary Neville, or the woman that used to be on Loose Women, former Apprentice person who was on the Jeremy Vine show this morning, essentially just echoing. She was like a kind of female Gary Neville, really, in terms of what she had to say. And it so spectacularly misses it. I know not everybody is affected by all aspects of the things that affect people who raise flags. I get that. But to completely misrepresent the thinking behind it, that this is all angry, middle-aged white blokes with beer bellies, and therefore it's a kind of a bit of a nod to something, from back in the 70s. It so spectacularly misses the point of what I believe this is all about. 0344 499 1000. A couple of voices coming up on this as well. Comments from you too. Our lines are open. It's 1:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Katie says, I posted a yellow ribbon on my Facebook page, not one like. If I'd posted a picture of my lunch, everybody would have liked it. When did my lunch become more important than hostages? It's a really good point, Katie. Look, I spot it as well on social media. You put a clip out when you've interviewed, I don't know, the Israeli ambassador to the UK, and it will get, you know, clearly at the moment a certain amount of attention. But then you'll put, I don't know, you'll ask what's the best recipe for apple crumble, and you'll probably get triple the amount of response and engagement. We live in very strange times, it seems. So we know about Gary Neville, got a bit of a backlash going on following that video that he posted on social media. It is worth, and if those of a nervous disposition who have, or anyone who has a propensity to maybe an anger issue, should switch off now, because we're going to play it again. Let's have a listen to what the former professional footballer had to say about the kind of people that want to put a flag up.
I was driving home from Salford City last night. I was driving out to Salford City, going down a Littleton Road, seeing 60, probably 50 or 60 Union Jack flags. And I just kept thinking as I was driving home last night that we're all being turned on each other. And the division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men who know exactly what they're doing.
Wow. Few people agree with him, but one person who did was ex-Loose Woman star Saira Khan. Here's what she had to say this morning.
You see a lot of men on marches that want these flags up. They are white, angry men who are dissatisfied with their own lives, and so the only way they can do it is by going out and being like that. That's what I see on a lot of these posts.
I mean, the idea that you could even let those words leave your mouth without considering that it might be a little bit iffy to bring race in this into this debate in this kind of way is extraordinary. Fortunately, there is some help on hand in the broadcasting world. Our fellow station, TalkSport, presenter there, mid-mornings, Simon Jordan, was not happy with the former Man U and England star Gary Neville. Here's what he had to say.
I think it's astonishing, in the wake of an Islamist terror attack, that he decides to have a go at middle-aged white men. Maybe the angry middle-aged white men are the ones that worked on minimum wage inside his hotel. I don't know. I think he's a champagne socialist and a coward. I think it's a dreadful thing to have said.
It is by any standards a dreadful thing to have said. In a moment we'll speak to an independent councillor, John Edwards, on this. First, Elliot Stanley, founding member of Operation Raise the Colours. Elliot, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, how are you?
Good as gold, thank you. Nice to have you with us. We've been banging on trying to defend what you guys and others have done for a long, long time. But, of course, there are people that hoover up the headlines in a far greater way. And if you're a former multi-millionaire footballer like Gary Neville, who I always thought was a pretty good pundit, actually, and he was clearly a gifted footballer, but he knows jack about what people think, the lived experience of the average man. He's obviously forgotten long ago when he left his roots. I don't know what's going on here. What was your response, Elliot, when you first heard him make those comments?
Well, I watched it on Twitter, and I was absolutely, or on X rather, I was absolutely astounded that he would make such provocative claims as to the fact that, you know, it's the fault of white middle-aged men for displaying the national flag on lampposts, that somehow we could be at all responsible for an Islamist terror attack. Shocking, absolutely shocking.
I mean, it's shocking and it's moronic as well. I mean, it's just a stupid thing to say, and you could even argue it's a bit of a dangerous thing to say. I mean, he's talking about division and God knows what, and there he is almost advancing that position. We were trying to get to the bottom of, I mean, different people, as you will know from your experience of putting flags up, Elliot, people have their own reasons, people have collective reasons. One of my theories on it is that it's a bit of a message at the moment to our government to remember which country you're actually flipping meant to be governing when you consider some of the things that are going on, and whether we're talking about grooming gangs, illegal migration and hotels, or protests that are allowed to take place just after a major terror attack with people mooching around the place with swastikas on. It's worth a reminder saying, see that flag up there? That's the country you're meant to be looking after, Mr. Starmer and others. That's my take on it. What's your takeaway on the kind of motivation behind Operation Raise the Colours?
Well, I mean, initially, I think it was a cry for help. You know, everyone's sat on their hands looking at the country going down the pan. So it started as a cry for help. It's grew arms and legs since then. We've kept going. But the overriding reason we're doing it is to display patriotism and for the love of our country and for the love of our flag. As I've said previously, there's been countless people over the years that have shed plenty of blood for that flag, and we need to maintain our identity as a country. We need to understand that flag represents all of us. It's a flag for the whole country. It should display unity for the whole country. I had a gentleman say to me on Sunday night when we were out in a particular part of Birmingham called Harborne that he thinks that being patriotic is racist. And I mean, that was a new one to us. You know, we've been called racist, fascist, all the rest of the rubbish. But to say that being patriotic is racist is astounding. It's utterly ridiculous. Yeah. To the point, I entered into conversation with him, and he actually said he thinks all flags are racist, irrespective of the country. He didn't believe in any country should have a flag or any country should have a border. And that's what we're up against when we're going out. We're experiencing increasing hostility now. And it's down to comments like Gary Neville making those comments that we're getting this hostility, and it's upsetting, but we're not going to be deterred. We're going to keep going.
Good for you. And I would say, Elliot, I mean, at least the fella you met at the weekend was a bit consistent. You know, at least he sort of backed up his argument with I don't believe in borders. And, I mean, it might be a bit batty and wacky, but, you know, that's his belief. Whereas Neville and this woman on the telly this morning, that they're trying to kind of go, oh, but I'm a patriot. I'm really, really proud to be. But I'm thinking, get in the bin. This doesn't make any sense to me. You've only got, I'm sure you've seen it already, because it doesn't take Twitter or X long to dig up some previous. And they managed to do that with Gary Neville and his national anthem endeavours, or lack of national anthem endeavours. I don't think the bloke ever sung it. He looks as if his dog's just died when the national anthem kicks in. So I think we know where Gary Neville comes from. And him going around the place saying, no, I'm very patriotic, I've played for my country. Cobblers.
Well, you know, I mean, I know he played as right back. I think he should have probably been in the left wing, shouldn't he, when he was playing? You know, I don't understand the rationale, and apparently that I've read this morning that there was 2 other flags displayed. One was a Moldovan flag, from my understanding, another one, and they weren't ordered to be took down. No. It was only the Union flag that was ordered to be took down. So it doesn't really say much for Gary Neville as a person, does it? Yeah, spot on. Listen, Elliot, I think you have the support of most people for what you're doing. By the way, my OCD said I've got one problem with flags. They have to be placed properly. Is that fair? Absolutely, we are placing them properly.
I know you guys are, but, you know, my mate, Rich, down the road, who is, I mean, I'm surprised, if you cut him in half, he's probably got a Union Jack in there somewhere. But he does have a thing about making sure our flag is displayed nicely, because every now and again somebody will whack one on with a bit of blue tack onto some discarded old shop, and I know they're doing it for their own reasons, and that's great in one respect. But I think that if they look nice, they kind of sell the message a bit, maybe a bit more prominently.
Well, we were putting them up with ladders initially, and now we've progressed on to what we're calling the flagmobile. So we've now got a cherry picker. So we had some complaints where people were saying that we were flying them at half mast. All it was, we couldn't get further up the lamppost. now we've got the cherry picker. We can go. We're displaying them right at the top of the lamppost. Yeah. But I'm here to dispel the myth that we're not. You know, we're not beer-swilling morons, and I've had lots of things said about us on social media where we haven't got a set of teeth between us, and we're all complete morons and idiots, and you know, and we're not. We're all family people. We're all hardworking. We're doing this in our spare time. We provided most of the funds for it ourselves, but we have got a website which is raisethecolors.org.uk where we're trying to get that out there so we can raise extra funds so we can keep it going. We're not giving up. We're going to keep going, and we're just going to keep raising them nice and high.
Good work. And Elliot, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate that. Elliot Stanley, founding member of Operation Raise the Colours. Let's go to work with John Edwards, independent councillor in Sandhurst. John, good afternoon to you. I don't know how many flags have been raised in addition to what might have been there already in your neck of the woods, but what's your overarching view of where we're at on Flaggate, I suppose, or flagpole, as we can call it?
Yeah, sure. Well, just for your last guess, I mean, when he said talking about what he's been called, you know, not a set of teeth between them. Yeah. This is the problem. It's this elitist snobbery attitude. You know, we've had it for years. We've had it from, you know, now Gary Neville and Khan, but we've had it from Emily Thornberry when she was sneering at that working class guy, white van, for having Gordon Brown saying that bigoted old woman. And that's because they're conditioning us to think that we can't have values that every other country has, which is, you know, pride of your country, pride of your flag, pride of your history. We're not allowed that. So they've just sneered at ordinary people and derided them. So that was my first point, because that just really got to me.
Fair point.
So yeah, Gary Neville. Well, it's yeah, it is. I mean, basically, so locally we had lots of flags go up, and they were taken down because of highways issues. That was the line the council gave. But I proposed to have an official one put up, but they voted that down as well. They said that was hateful and divisive. And the same thing's happening here. Gary Neville thinks our flag is hateful and divisive, but it's not the flag. It's not the flag that's changed, it's their attitude to it and their reaction. Keep on saying that it's divisive and hateful. No wonder that people start believing that. And also they're trying to gatekeep it. When I fly it, playing football, that's absolutely fine. But if ordinary people do it, that's the problem. And now this is just a quiet defiance, actually. People saying, no, I've had enough of that. I'm not a racist. I'm not far right. I can be proud of my country. And that's why we're going to fly it.
How did we get here to this place? That, you know, look, obviously over the years, all sorts of flags have been used for divisive reasons. And naturally, if you are, you know, back in the day when there, you know, were horrendous characters forming big groups against, you know, anyone of colour or any other minority attribute, as it were, people might have used the flag. I mean, they never represented the majority of people, and the flag isn't the most symbolic part of what they were campaigning for anyway. However, how do we get to a stage where something as simple as a flag could find itself in the middle? I mean, it's not as if one group is inventing it over another. It's not as if the right have come out with, oh, look, we've got this new idea called a flag. This is what it's all about. I mean, it's the country's flag. I mean, it reeks uncontroversialness.
It does, and our flags, you know, as I said, you know, it's them who are politicising it and changing it. Our flag stands for liberty. We spread democracy around. We ended slavery. We fought fascism. You know, just because one small group might have used it in the past in the 70s to spread hate, it doesn't mean that you suddenly just give up on it and say, oh yes, you know, we won't give that up. And there's a clear double standard here, isn't there? You know, every other flag seems to be okay. I mean, it's very telling that, you know, Gary Neville didn't mention the Moldovan flag or the other national flag that was up there. Pride flags. I mean, imagine if there was an EU flag or a pride flag on that building site. Gary Neville wouldn't have been taking it down. He would have been having a selfie with it.
He wouldn't have said a word, would he?
No, he has that.
He genuinely, I mean, that's the crazy thing. He literally would not, you can guarantee it. It's not even a guess. You can guarantee he would have said nothing.
It's totally nothing. Yeah, I mean, the division is coming from them by saying our flag is divisive, and that's not on, because it's not. You know, this is just ordinary people expressing their patriotism and their concerns. Yeah. You know, they're fed up. You know, they're totally fed up, Ian, of just being told that they're racist, that the country isn't to be proud of, as I said before. And, you know, this just is the way of pushing back about that. And it's totally legitimate. You know, what gets me is just stop gatekeeping it. Stop saying you can't fly the flag. When we fly it at our conference, that's fine. Yeah. If you do it, you're a racist.
There's something wrong with you. Yeah, good point. John, great to have you on with us, sir. Thank you. John Edwards is an independent councillor at Sandhurst. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Great comments coming in as well. One here, I mean, this sums it up. What's with all the racism against white men? Neville has gone too far. I think he's lost it, says John in London. Yeah, and then that woman, Syra Khan, pitches in and says the same thing. I mean, can you imagine just saying, yeah, I'm listening to all this tripe that brown women spout on the TV? You know, so many angry brown women there are out there. I mean, really? It wouldn't enter the average person's head to say that. 0344 499 1000, 10 to 2, this is Talk.
At that time, it wasn't so funny. Like, I was holding the window shut because the window on the driver's side is meant to lock from the inside,
right,
but it didn't. So I was literally holding it shut. You can see on the video there, I'm talking to someone who's opened it from the outside,
right,
briefly, and then I'm holding it shut afterwards.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Let's go to your calls. Derek is in Dublin. How are you doing, Derek?
Ian, how are you? Enjoying the show as normal.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to pass comment now, not just on your show, but other shows on your station, and other shows indeed in the UK, here in Ireland, or Sky News and whatever,
yep,
that we're watching now this collective grip on the Union Jack, that no one can grab hold of it quick enough.
Yes.
And everybody now is suddenly saying, you know, Britain is great, we've got a great history, we're a great nation, we should be proud, and all of the rest of it. And I get all that, and I agree with all that. But here's the thing. whenever you have the opportunity again, Ian, or any of your colleagues to speak to a Kemi Badenoch or speak to someone in the Labour Party who's pretty high up, or anybody in Reform, in the middle of all this this gushing of patriotism, just ask them when they intend to introduce a public holiday for St George's Day.
Yeah.
Because that will be the time when they will, oh, well, we don't really want to go that far.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, it comes up every couple of years. Somebody raises it, and it never becomes anything, does it? I mean, I know there's implications with.
I was just listening to Isabel there. She was talking about Flag Days in Dubai. So,
yeah.
Well, there you are. Flag Day is your national holiday, your St Patrick's Day. And I would say, I added to your colleague that. You know, if you've got if it's really done properly, St George's Day, celebrated properly in the UK, and not only in the UK, but in the British diaspora across the globe, it would dwarf anything offered up by St Patrick's Day that we see here in Ireland. It would absolutely dwarf it. And I think it could be managed properly. I mean, I know this fear that the flag's going to be hijacked by certain movements who we need not name. Yep. But it doesn't have to be like that, because we're showing now how people are talking on your show.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking like that. They're thinking, yes, this country now needs to assert itself a little bit.
Well, when I gave the list of all the things that have happened in this country. I mean, you think of the arguments around diversity. You know, the grooming gangs is an obvious example. Now, the reason that's an example is because one of the reasons why we didn't hear about the grooming gangs was because they didn't want to upset the diversity thing. So we surrendered us for the sake of some other imaginary thing called diversity. And little girls were denied justice. In fact, they weren't just denied justice, they were told to clear off, and they were probably lying anyway. And so it's all of those things. I know it doesn't sound on the face of it like it's directly connected, but I think it is. It's like, no, this is the United Kingdom. You can have diversity in it as much as you like, but you don't have it there at the expense of the country. It's founding values, as it were.
It's what we are. Diversity is what we are. It's what we're known for across the world.
100%.
It's one of the reasons why so many people want to actually get on a boat and come here, amongst other things. But I do think now is really an optimal time to launch. Well, if all of our politicians and leaders are so patriotic, let's put their money where their mouth is, and let's celebrate being English. Let's have being British. Let's have a day of this country where people, and have a day off, and let's probably support it, and let's celebrate it, because then we know that we are then all probably on the same page.
There it is,
celebrating this great nation.
Brilliantly put, Derek. Thank you very much. I love that. Great call from Derek in Dublin. Tom's in Gloucester. What have you got for us, Tom? Afternoon.
Well, Ian, I'm just really worried about that Northern numpty Neville.
Yeah.
Wandering
Let's
around
pray for Gary.
He's wandering around cowering at the sight of an English flag. Imagine, he weren't a bad footballer in his day, but imagine how much better he could have been were it not for all the racists brandishing the Union flags, the naval ensigns, the English flags, all around where he must have been terrified, poor little man.
Very, very, very upset, isn't he? He's got really, really discombobulated over a flag.
Yeah, I mean, he must have been, his skin must have been creeping to have an England flag on his shirt.
Yeah. I wonder, maybe we need a crowdfunder for Gary.
Well, we need something for Gary. Crowdfunder, I'm not so sure about.
Yeah, I don't think he needs the dosh, does he? Listen, Tom, thank you. Short and sweet, love it. This one comes in from Ian, who says, if it wasn't for our flag, half of Europe would be flying a Russian or a German flag right now. Neville needs to be stripped of any rewards for playing for England. Well, he's worth about 70 million quid, isn't he? He does really, really well out of it. And, he's allowed his politics. He's allowed to have that. But if that's the way you want to define somebody, because it's almost the last refuge of the scoundrel, to borrow and rework a quotation there, to go down that route of, I disagree with this, I fundamentally disagree with it, it's not my cup of tea, it's not what I would do, so therefore, if you have a different view to me, I will call you a racist. I'll call you a white racist. You're white, you're racist, you got no teeth, you got a beer belly, the list goes on. Our lines are open, headlines coming now.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Lots going on at this end. We are, of course, responding to the Gary Neville nonsense. Sparked a bit of a backlash, as you would imagine. 24 hours later, it's getting no better. This, of course, is all about him ordering the removal of a Union flag from his £400 million construction site, criticising its divisive use by angry middle-aged white men. Others have now chimed in. Workers accused him of being unpatriotic. While Neville defended his stance, he claims he opposes the flag being used negatively. Not quite sure how. Also this afternoon, 2 years on from the October the 7th attack, Keir Starmer has condemned pro-Palestinian protests taking place today as un-British, warning they incite hatred and exploit tensions to target Jewish communities. He highlighted Jewish fears amid rising anti-Semitism and called for respect and safety for all amidst the ongoing conflicts. Today is not the day to be protesting. I think it's as simple as that. More on that in just a moment. And Scotland Yard has dismantled a gang exporting 40,000 stolen phones in the UK annually. It's a £70 million theft operation. Raids led to 46 arrests and 2,000 recovered phones as police urged a company like Apple to introduce a kill switch to combat the growing epidemic of phone theft. There's a lot of money in nicking someone's mobile. It's as straightforward as that. 0344 499 1000. 4 minutes after 2 o'clock. Welcome to the home of common sense. Welcome to Talk. And of course, 2 years today after the October the 7th Hamas attacks that killed 1,200 Israelis, took 251 hostages. Student protests against Israel begin today. Keir Starmer has slammed them as un-British, urging respect for Jewish communities. Well, we already saw at the weekend after an attack on a synagogue, that very evening, people purporting to be pro-Palestinian, in truth anti-Jew, anti-Israel protesters were out, not a stone's throw from where the terror attack took place. Let's get a word on this from a couple of guests. First with us is Adam Ma'anit, who is the cousin of a hostage that was taken. Taki Aydin was taken hostage after Mr. Aydin's 18-year-old daughter was killed by Hamas. Adam, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. It's a difficult day, of course. No reasonable person is forgetting what has happened, but it's somewhat compounded by the fact that there are still people out there who are willing to. Notice you're wearing the yellow ribbon. You would have seen that footage over here of a girl cutting down yellow ribbons from a fence for reasons that no sane or decent person can quite fathom. But what do you make of that kind of clash of almost ideas on how people view things? I mean, my sense is you can hold more than one view if you want to, and that's totally fine. We live in a democracy. But to deliberately go out and antagonise, whether it's cutting down ribbons or whether it's holding nefarious and awful placards in the middle of a protest, that's quite another thing, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think the Yellow Ribbon campaign and the symbol of it has been very important for people to publicly express their grief and their solidarity with the hostages, 48 of whom are still languishing in Gazan hell tunnels as we speak. And it's really been an important part of people's ability to show support. And you know, doing so publicly is a very important part of people's ability to feel like, you know, they're not alone, and to share that with others in their community and to get that support. And so for people to cut it down is to do the opposite. It's to show that they don't care and they don't want the support and they don't recognize us as victims. And I think you kind of touched on it a bit, where I think the reason why is because they don't want to see us as victims. They can't handle the nuance. They've developed a very binary view of the world and the conflict and what's happening in the Middle East.
But that in itself is classic anti-Semitism, isn't it? The idea that Jews could be suffering. After all, you know, the Jews run the world. Jews are somehow armour-plated from any kind of hassle. Jews are the aggressors. Jews are, and the list, you know, David and Goliath, and the list goes on. And it's classic, and some people, it seems, just can't see beyond that, even when it's so obvious that October 7th, very innocent men, women, children, were children taken hostage. Many never ever returning, of course, we know that, and still lots still to be released from Hamas.
A baby, Ian, a 9-month-old baby was taken hostage.
I mean,
you know,
who does that and gets away with it and doesn't
then murdered in captivity?
Correct. And for some reason that misses the radar of the kind of people who are willing to cut ribbons down off a fence.
Well, you can't agitate people and incite them and get them excited, their blood up, and get them coming out onto the streets to make everyone's lives miserable if you introduce the nuance, if you introduce the idea that there are victims on both sides and that there are complexities that are beyond people's understanding and that there are human beings, you know, suffering on all fronts. And if then it makes it harder for people to hate us and harder for people to chant genocidal slogans in the streets of London and Manchester. You know, I was standing outside in Brighton in front of my synagogue as a guard wearing a stab vest 2 hours after the Heaton Park attack. And a group of people drove by and shouted baby killers at us. And the irony was not lost on me that my 18-year-old cousin was murdered on this day 2 years ago.
Sure.
And that my 16-year-old cousin was murdered in 2002 during the second intifada, the very intifada that these protesters are chanting for in the streets, calling for a globalized intifada. Well, Heaton Park is what that means. Heaton Park is the intifada globalized. And so we see what they mean, and they can only say those things if they are either sadistic, malicious, and truly understand what they're saying, or they're so willfully ignorant that they prefer to be blind.
Well, listen, on that point, we are thinking of your family today, Adam. Thank you for being with us. That is Adam Ma'anit, who is the cousin of hostage Taki Aiden, who was taken hostage after Mr. Aiden's 18-year-old daughter was killed by Hamas. So you can see how close he is to this story. Let's go to work with Alex Hearn, who's the director of Labour Against Anti-Semitism. Alex, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
I mean, it is an extraordinary moment in our kind of, I don't know whether it's exclusive within our history, but it certainly feels very jarring that we have this horror that took place in Manchester last week. We have today the second anniversary of the Hamas attacks, and yet simultaneously we have people out on the streets who are almost agitated, the very opposite to the empathy that most people would show. Keir Starmer, to his credit, has said, you know, today is not the day to be doing it. But what a strange crossroads or position we've arrived in this country.
Yeah, I mean, when even the Prime Minister is saying that this is a terrible idea, you know it must be a terrible idea. He says that Britain has become indifferent to anti-Semitism, and he's right, isn't he? He's also right when he says it's a threat to the nation and its values, because the freedom to worship, the freedom to be educated and go about your daily life without harassment and fear because of your identity, those are enshrined in our democracy. But that hasn't quite been the case for British Jews for some time. So it's nice of Keir Starmer to finally notice, but it partly happened under his watch, and we need more than words. You know, he urged the police to use all the force of the law, but this hasn't been the case for 2 years. We've seen hate normalised en masse on a regular basis, making city centres a no-go zone for many people, especially Jews. So when Keir Starmer says this is not who we are as a country, the facts aren't fully supporting that. We are becoming that as a country, and if we aren't, he needs to prove it isn't. He said we'll not be silent or indifferent to hatred, but that's exactly what got us here in the first place. You know, and you're right, we see anti-Semitism on the streets, in the media, in the NHS, in the arts and elsewhere, spiraling completely out of control, unchallenged, to the point where just existing as a Jew is an act of defiance, really. And now we're asking hardcore racists if they wouldn't mind terribly being thoughtful to the people they want to eliminate. Well, it's going to need something a little bit more than that, because you know what's un-British? Allowing racists to run riot and empowering them so they feel they don't feel any consequences.
Yeah, and the problem is, and we touched on it with Adam, I guess, Alex, our last guest, is that, and it's like any sort of battle, you know, that we see it in politics, that when you sufficiently demonise and reduce your political opponents to such a place, as people have done with Jews and Israelis, then anything's fair game, right? That's the way it kind of works. You've satisfied yourself that you're dealing with almost subhuman things here. So therefore, by walking around with a board saying God knows what and cutting down ribbons, it's fine. Because, you know, it's the equivalent of doing it to Pol Pot or Saddam Hussein, because that's how far these people have gone with their kind of twisted belief.
Yeah, I mean, protests normally happen on the weekend, so they picked this date knowing that Jews would be remembering our dead, and just days after this deadly Manchester attack at the synagogue. So just imagine being a Jewish student at this time. Yeah. These protests are deliberately designed to intimidate and cause maximum distress. They couldn't even just let Jews have one day of a time of deep trauma for our community. And this isn't a well-meaning protest. It's a procession of hate dancing on graves. And it's backed by some well-known hate groups with some really questionable links. But, you know, in some universities, DEI policies and duty of care to protect the welfare of students has gone out the window when it comes to Jews. Yeah. And we see that time and time again, haven't we? Such as this feminist group at the university who are screening today, celebrating resistance. You know, 2 years after, there was a pattern of mass sexual assault. So it really does flush our values away, anti-Semitism does.
Indeed, spot on. Alex, thank you for your time as well and thoughts on today. That is Alex Hearn, Director of Labour Against Anti-Semitism, with us on the programme. I don't even know how you begin to try and square this curious circle of hatred that would snake its way around the place on a day like today. But, you know, we shouldn't be surprised because we saw it just hours after the terror attack in Manchester, where people thought it was OK to take to the streets on this issue. And again, this comes down to, and I've mentioned it on a couple of issues, it does tie in with flags. It really does. And the reasons, and my kind of proposition, if you like, on this, is that one of the reasons why people are feeling strongly about flags and raising flags is because you want your government to listen. And I look at those protests and some of the protests taking place. They're what they call the pro-Palestinian protests, but they're really anti-Israel protests. And you look at the sort of makeup of people, and it doesn't look like, you know, to me, it's like, why are we having this debate? Why are people protesting against Greta Thunberg's aid boat being refused entry to the West Bank? Why? How has that happened? How has that taken precedence over the feelings and a terror attack that's just happened? What bit of that does our government not look at and go, no, that's all wrong? So it's one more example, as I mentioned with grooming gangs, as I mentioned with migrant hotels, etc., where the rights of the locals went out the window, almost in favour of the rights of the illegal migrants. And you think, hang on. No, that's not the order of events. That's not how you get a civilised, decent country. That doesn't work. So that sense of Brits feeling socially demoted is absolutely key to all of this. And I think the pro-Palestinian stroke anti-Jew marches are a great example of that. Because whilst I think I speak for everyone, we say, well, I support free speech, but I don't really support what's going on here, because it's horrific that anybody would be out having a celebration or on a day like this, just 2 years after what happened on October the 7th. And then we scratch our head and Gary Neville goes, why are they raising flags? What's wrong with these people? Dirty, filthy, white, middle-aged, angry men. OK, words to that effect. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to that issue of flags. Hazel is in Hampshire. What are you thinking, Hazel? Good afternoon to you.
Oh, what am I thinking? Where do we start? Well, to start off with, I have a flag flying in my window, indoors. It's been there for a few weeks now.
OK.
But this is in memory, really, of all the people in my family who fought under that flag. Yeah. They fought for this country. My grandfather, my father, my late husband, all of those, my son, they all fought in the army. They were all served the country. And I was very, very proud of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I hate the idea that all of their efforts and all of their, I don't know, dedication to duty, I suppose,
sure,
has been just rubbished. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't count anymore. Everything's all about Muslims now. You know, and I'm not a Muslim. What about us?
Well, in fact, it's not even... I mean, obviously the whole Muslim theme is massive at the moment, but I think it's about much more than that. I think it's about the indigenous people, as in councillors, the legal world, education, who are as guilty as anyone of almost rubbishing Britishness in favour of something else. That's, to me, what the real problem is.
It is. But I'm not ashamed to be British.
Neither should you, and neither should you. Hazel, thank you very much indeed for that. And Gary says, I see the flag waving by white Brits as a desperate cry for help from people who see their way of life rapidly disappearing under a deluge of imported cultures from third world countries, and you only have to wander around the dumps that now pass for city and town centres in places like Birmingham, Bradford or Leicester to witness this for yourself. The problem with the likes of two Garys, Lineker and Neville, is that their idea of multiculturalism is living next door to a Swiss CEO of a global chemical company, having their kids go to the same private school as the children of the Danish ambassador, and attending the opening night of the new tapas bar that opened in their village. That's brilliantly put. That's exactly what their idea of diversity is. That's what they would call, well, I'm inclusive, you know, look at me, look at my kids. They had, you know, Emmanuel's children came round to play, and they're part French and part Belgium on their mother's royal side. You know, it's that's how they think, these chancellors. They've got no experience of the real world. And it's not about, you can have multiculturalism, but what you can't have is a diversity agenda trumping, usurping and jumping on the rights of individuals. And when we had the grooming gang scandal, that's a classic example where young girls were denied, not just denied justice, but were told to go away, stop making stuff up, for the sake of diversity. Not believed, not followed. Social worker, good, I mean, the list goes on. That's an example of why people feel fed up. That's just one of many. And I think the same thing happens with the the anti-Israel marches as well. It's the same thing. Why would we be allowing this essentially group of foreign third world merchants to be organising a rally in this country who in part find it either funny or they're neutral on the kidnapping and the death of many hostages 2 years ago? It's that upside downness that I think people are rallying against. 0344 499 1000. We're back with more from you coming next on Talk.
because if you'll go, you'll never come back.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm still stuck at that moment 2 years ago when I believe that until the last hostage will be back home, we won't be able to move on from that day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 2. This one in from David Bristol. By including the word white in his rant, this is Gary Neville, surely he made a racist statement. Why anybody should take notice of him or Lineker is beyond me. Well, yeah, it is a racist. And I know, look, whites can't claim racism in the same way as other... we all get that. We all understand that. But if you wanted to be absolutely to the letter about it, yeah, it's a racist comment. His defence might be, well, I'm a white bloke, so I can't be racist against I guess it would be something like that. Ricky and Dudley, regarding the phone gang being smashed, at least we've had one gang get smashed. Very good point. Very good point. This one comes from Stacey in Norwich. I've had my England flag in my window, apart from washing it, for 20 years. Does that now make me a racist? I don't think so. I'm loving the MP of Great Yarmouth. The flags were put up around the area and someone cut them down. He's got the CCTV of them and reported to the police as theft, but he got some people to replace them. Brilliant MP Rupert Lowe, says Stacey in Norwich. Stacey's well ahead of the game. 20 years with the flag up. There used to be a woman on the way to school who had a flag. She had a flag in her window, and she always used to put a poster up there was wrestling at the sports centre like every couple of months, and she put this massive poster up advertising, Big Daddy versus Giant Haystacks. And as school kids on the way to school, we'd obviously stare at this poster. We were quite fascinated, and she'd always come out and go, "What are you looking at? Gear off!" It's like, you've got a poster in your window. That's the whole point of a poster in your window. And she had the Union Jack, so I don't quite know where she was. She was a bit scatty. But flags, as well as wrestling posters, have been up in people's windows for many, many years, and Stacey in Norwich has done it for 2 decades, so fair play. Carl's in Liverpool on Gary Neville and Co. What have you got for us, Carl?
Good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
Well, he's basically calling me, really, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Middle-aged white man who's supported Liverpool Football Club, paid his dues going there every week, the same as the Man United fans. He's basically, he's massively called out a large portion of his earning base through his career in football.
Well, that's what I think's quite weird, that, a big portion, probably the biggest portion of his base has been white middle-aged men, right?
Yeah, so I put something on my Twitter yesterday, just on the video, like something like, oh, Gary, I served my country for many, many years. I've also raised my colours, put the flag flying high at my home. I'm middle-aged. Am I to blame for the attack on the synagogue? How disgusting of you, Gary. And it lit up and got loads of response to that comment.
Wow.
And it beggars belief why these so-called celebrities want to get involved in politics and have a say when that man lives in a different bubble to everyone else.
Sure.
He may walk the streets of Manchester to get to his businesses, but he doesn't associate with anyone. He doesn't the working class men and women of this country. You know, he's in that sort of bubble. But I serve my country. I'm proud. That flag means a whole lot to me and a lot of people that I've served, and just people. But we are put in a position now where we have to raise our flags because the country and the recent governments have forgotten about us. So yeah, we will raise them and we will be proud of them, and we're not racist because that is the biggest lie. This whole thing that is being told that white British people are racist. We're not. We're scared, and we're panicking about our country and our culture.
Yep.
So let us have our say, and the Prime Minister's not there to back us up. So we have to keep going. We have to.
Yeah, I think that is.
Having our say. We can't just be quiet on the scene. We've got politicians against us. We've got the so-called loony left. Celebrities now. Who else in the celebrity world is going to have our backing and say, this is it now?
Yeah.
We have to fight back. There's no one out there that wants to push, these mainstream celebrities, these high earners. There's no one there yet. The working class person is the one that's getting kicked all the time.
Because they're the ones that they're the ones that are conflating the flag, though, aren't they? They're the ones going, you wave the flag, it's a little bit racist, a bit like it's got the sort of National Front, EDL kind of stuff. They're inventing that narrative, and suggesting that that's what you're on board with, Carl.
Of course, yeah, but you know what, Ian? If I may, I want to urge, when this international break's over, I want to urge every supporter across the country to take the Union Jack, the St George, take it to your grounds and show Mr Neville that we're not all white middle-aged men who are angry at the country, because we're angry. We're angry at the politicians and the people like him who are suggesting that we're racist. We're not. We're patriotic. We're worried. There's no one else out there who on a higher platform that is helping us like the left.
Bang on.
We are getting beaten and beaten and beaten, Ian, and there's only so much the working class people can take.
I wish Neville could hear that, because you're speaking with real passion and fluency, Carl, on an issue that so many people would back you up on. But of course, your view and the view of others in that respect is just kind of dismissed as you're just an angry white middle-aged bloke, etc. Carl, I've got to move for time. Thank you, mate. Great to have you on with us. John in London says, what's with all the racism against white men? Neville has gone too far. I think he's lost it. I think he's lost it, and he's lost a little bit, really, because, of course, when you're sort of an ardent lefty, you have to have an enemy. There always has to be an enemy. There's got to be a battle. And when you think you've solved the battle, you find another one, and you just keep doing it. It's like St George trying to slay another dragon after. There's got to be another one out there. Where's the next injustice? Where's the next iniquity? I've got to find it and winkle it out. That's how they roll, these characters. 0344 499 1000. It's 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You don't want to be missing that. 25-3. Now, Scotland Yard has dismantled a phone-snatching gang who are found to be exporting 40,000 stolen devices a year, going from the UK to China. Operation Eco Steep saw, or is it Echo Steep? 300 officers raiding 28 homes, resulting in 46 arrests and 2,000 recovered phones. I mean, they're at it 24/7, these characters. At least 230 phones were stolen every day on average in the UK, adding to the sense that the country is descending into increasing lawlessness. Against this backdrop, the Tories have proposed a wider stop and search policy for police and crime in 2,000 high crime hotspots across the UK. Let's get a word on this from Susan Hall, Assembly member, leader of the Conservative group at the London Assembly. Good afternoon to you, Susan.
Hello, Ian.
Nice to have you with us, joining us live from the conference. Nice photograph of, or image of Margaret Thatcher behind you as well. Maybe we need a bit of the Iron Lady will when it comes to fighting crime.
Well, we certainly do, and I'm thrilled to hear what you've just said to your listeners and viewers about all those people being arrested. But let's hope that the criminal system deals with them properly. It's no good our wonderful police actually catching people if they're not put away. I was in the conference earlier when Chris Philp spoke, and good on him. That was proper Conservative values. If people are committing crimes, doesn't matter who they are, then they need to be arrested, locked up.
London is your patch, of course. Your arch nemesis is Sadiq Khan, who seems to have a PhD in ignoring questions that you put to him, and others as well. And this area of crime, every time he speaks, he talks about crime being down. He very rarely tackles the issue. I see him getting more animated about ULEZ cameras than I see about knife crime, and I hardly hear a squeak when it comes to mobile phone theft. It's off the scale.
Well, it is. He just turns a blind eye. If anything's going badly, then he'll talk about, but invariably, the environment. He won't talk about anything else. He is a dreadful mayor, as you well know. I wish he hadn't been re-elected this time, but he was. But he's really got to start putting more money into the Metropolitan Police, because we're losing officers all the time. And whilst today's raid was very good, we all know that crime is absolutely off the scale underneath Sadiq Khan.
In terms of this kind of criminality, phone theft, it's a curious one, isn't it? Because individually, you won't really get much of a police response because somebody nabbed your phone at a bus stop. But collectively, this is organised crime.
Of course it is, and I think these people don't just do that. I mean, if you've got a propensity to do something like that, you'd do something else. They are big crime groups, and I'm glad to see that one of them has been smashed today. I hope more is done, because it is all the small things added together that make people feel very unsafe. And of course, the main job of a mayor of any city is to make sure that their residents, or in London, their Londoners, are safe, and we don't feel safe.
And one of the areas that I know has happened at the Tory conference today, Conservatives proposing wider stop and search powers in those big high crime areas, removing the need for grounds for suspicion. Would you support this, Susan?
100%. Stop and search takes knives off our streets, which is what we want. Police officers won't just do it willy-nilly, because sometimes you get a sense. I've been out on many raids with police officers. I've been out on whole evenings when we've been watching people walking around the streets, and sometimes police officers get a sense of what's going on. They often know the gangs and the gang members, so they know who to go and approach. I absolutely applaud what Chris Philp has said today. It was an extremely good speech, very inspiring, because it's what Conservatives should be saying.
It's exactly what Conservatives should be saying, isn't it? Listen, Susan, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. I know tomorrow is the big key speech from Kemi Badenoch, 11 a.m. You'll hear... Well, I don't know if you'll hear the whole thing live. I only say that because I know Julia, who will be on air, doesn't always want to damage understandably, it's a health and safety thing, damage listeners' brains by hearing every moment of a keynote speech rather than dipping in and taking the kind of the more interesting or debatable points. But there will be a lot to discuss on Badenoch's back, I think, is sort of the subheading that's out there at the moment. This one from Paul in Southend. There's an alarming number of people in this country who would like to change the colour of our flag to white. I'm sure that's absolutely true. One here from Dave in Bristol. By including the... Oh, I think I read that, didn't I? Did, Dave. Thank you very much indeed for that. Ian, the Raise the Flag campaign achieved its aims. It had a full Labour conference waving the Union Jack where normally they'd have been flying a Palestine flag. It had Neville and co-sending themselves into a nervous breakdown. This one from Vinny. My dad was in the war, my brother in other wars around the world. I'm proud of them and my country, for king and country. Fly the flag, be proud of our patents that fought, or should that be parents, who fought for our freedom, says Vincent. And that's also part of the point, isn't it? I think, as Isabel Oakeshott said earlier, it's about a sort of social cohesion. It's about going, right, here's the centre point of gravity, if you like, for a civilised country. And America sort of have the right idea in terms of the flag, and it's not, you know, unusual for someone to, they might put their nationality in their title, but they always put, you know, if you're French American. I get that. That, I think, works mostly okay, but it's not perfect. You don't want to reduce anybody's identity. There's nothing wrong with coming from another place. There's nothing wrong with worshipping another religion. There's nothing wrong with being, if you want to call yourself a different gender, you know, you go nuts to, sorry, unfortunate pun, but you take the point. And, you know, if you're from a different religion, all of those things, none of that really matters. But there's got to be a sort of central point that we acknowledge. And it's a balance with free speech. I don't want to stop people protesting. In fact, it's almost more delicious when somebody protests against something you disagree with, because it firms up your genuine belief in free speech, even if you disagree with it. But that balance has to be achieved intelligently and with consideration. And when you have protests taking place today against Israel on the second anniversary of October 7th, you kind of wonder what flipping world we've arrived at. This is the UK. We're allowing that to go on. We allowed it last week after a terror attack, for God's sake. Matthew's in Newport on flags. What have you got for us, Matthew?
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I didn't hear you just conflate the flag with the demonstrations, did I?
In the sense of why people are rebelling against bad things in our society.
Okay, you slightly broke out, and I'll make sure I've got a better signal.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to put across the point that we're not all, I was going to say flag S-H-A-G, that one.
Yep.
We're not all flag wavers either. I find it rather uncomfortable, if I'm honest. I see it as the rise of nationalism, not patriotism. This idea that we've lost the use of the flag and we've got to regain it. A small group of people have given up. The flag has been worn, has been raised every Olympics, every World Cup, last night's proms, every other week in an F1 Grand Prix. You know, this isn't a hidden symbol of our, you know, nationality in that sense. But what is happening now is a small group of people who are funded are putting flags up using cherry pickers like the other day. And I don't want them in my streets. I drive through it and I just see it represents the rise of populist politics, rise of nationalism. And haven't we learned about that in history?
I mean, look, of course, that could be one interpretation from some people. But like all protests, I sense on this, Matthew, that the average person is, this is my theory, is sending a message to our government. When we see things like, and I keep mentioning the same things, when we allow a load of anti-Semites to wander around our streets with swastikas and all sorts of other chants, just after a terror attack, by the way, on the Jewish community. When we allow that to happen, there is a sense that we've got something back to front. When we allow the rights of illegal migrants in a hotel, for example, fair play to the individuals that came over here. I'm sure they've all got their story, but we don't know who they are. And they trump the rights of locals. Then I think people are right to say to their government, can we just remind you of which country you are running?
I don't see that. I see that you are conflating different issues there personally. I think you've got... I'm not saying that this isn't a reaction to areas where there's massive... what we're going to call illegal immigration and the hotels. You know, I'm not a great fan of, and I'm not sure I can defend that because, you know, it's costing us so much money and we've got to sort it out. But what you just said, you said something like the average person. And what is the average person? Are you putting that? Is that a what do they say? Is that denigrating a person? Is that I can't think of the phrase, but anyway.
Maybe the average thinker, the average straight thinker. Let's put it like that.
Okay, well, let's put it the average reading age of our population. All right, 48% average reading age is 13 years of age. Now, are you talking about?
Is it? Where'd you get that from?
I don't know, but something I made up. No, but what I'm saying is, it is a fact. It's very low. It might not be 13. What I'm trying to say is that you're saying this average person. That's like people who are saying the majority of the British population, and they say these phrases, and they're completely unsupported.
Well, they're not completely unsupported. If you look at, you know, the proper polling rather than sort of daft anecdotes on social media or things that people say in the pub, there is general support for... I mean, why do you think Nigel Farage is doing so well?
Well, why would anyone want to attend a march that was formed and created by Tommy Robinson and put their name to that? I mean, why would you want to be associated with that?
Well, many people would agree with that specific point, but the world works differently now, doesn't it? Because you can have lots of people that completely disagree with him, but actually do agree with the idea that there is a sense that we've lost a cohesiveness in this country. That's not a bad position to begin a protest, that you believe that the rudder, the pulleys and the block and tackle and the systems and cogwheels that run our country have kind of all fallen apart over the last 20, 30 years.
But you mentioned Nigel Farage. Why are they supporting him? Why does Nigel Farage come out and saying things like, our swans are being eaten? Do you know what I mean? If you're going to try and treat this man with any seriousness and really think he's got the country as a whole, you know, in his heart, then it isn't. It's making, quite frankly, it's making an enemy of the brown person.
But that doesn't mean that every single thing that Nigel Farage says is true. I mean, I think I know what he was trying...
You see where he's coming from, don't you? You see what the sort of nuances of his conversations are.
Yeah, but what if he's right about some of those nuances? I mean, somebody like yourself might not be able to see it. So, OK, the swan thing. I'm sure there's an example, because there was that RSPCA programme on once where they collared somebody cooking a swan in their kitchen. Yeah, there's going to be an example. Do immigrants generally eat swans? Of course they don't. And I'd imagine it's pretty bloody hard to catch one apart from anything else. I agree with you, but I think he's making a point about the kind of society or the lack of cohesion that we're in. Nobody wants to criticise that.
Can I make this 2 points?
Yeah.
The only people I've ever met that are flag-waving, what I call nationalists, were not nice people. I'm not charring everyone with it, but it always seems to be the person that you wouldn't want living next door to you. Now, on a lighter note, a man was once arrested for eating a swan, and the judge asked him what it tasted like, and he said, rather like eagle.
Is that right?
It's not a good joke. It got a tumbleweed reaction, but I went for it. Anyway.
Listen, he didn't have to pay for it because he put it on the bill. There's another dad joke to finish on. Listen, nice to speak. Matthew, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Works better with a duck, that gag, but you know what I mean. Matthew in Newport, who's a little questioning over the reasons people are raising flags and the like. I mean, there's 20... I always say 2 things can be true. 20 things can be true. I mean, the swan thing, yeah, it didn't really... It was when... Do you remember when Trump said, they're eating the cats and dogs, pets. They're eating the cats. Beautiful cat. It's a lovely cat. The best. They're eating the cats. That was the moment when you thought, what? So I think the Swan thing, beautiful Swan, was in the same kind of department. It's tricky, and I'm not defending anyone, any politician that makes guff up, whoever they are, right, left or in the middle. But sometimes there's a metaphor for a lack of social cohesion, and I think that's probably what he was reaching for, and maybe Mr Farage might have perhaps advanced that as a reason to begin, as a kind of caveat to the Swan story. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
My thoughts are with those people held underground, starved, not afforded one shred of humanity by their captors. Contrast that with idiotic, stupid, perverse students who want to hold commemorative events. And are these events to honour the Jewish people that were slaughtered that day? No. They are not. No. And shame upon each and every person who takes part in any such gathering today.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We'll go back to the cause in a second. We'll talk to Gary in Wellingborough in just a moment. We've got a brand new voice of doom, by the way. For the uninitiated, this is the mystery voice bit, but it's always a politician, past or present, usually past, sometimes very much past. Here's the question then. Who is this?
Nothing right-wing.
Wow. Here it is again.
Nothing right-wing.
It's nice to have a new one. I've got a bit fed up with the last one. I know it went on for 13 days, but it's not a record or anything. But it was really, it was really bothering me, the last one. I began not to like the bloke. I didn't even know him. I hated him. Here's the new one.
Nothing right-wing.
Who's that? 87222. You can have a guess. Don't phone in. We haven't got prizes or anything. You fancy cracking on with it, then that's the number, 87222. If we get a correct answer, of course, we reveal everything after the headlines at 3. Here it is again.
Nothing right-wing.
87222. Back to your calls. Gary in Wellingborough. How you doing, Gary?
Hi, Ian, you right?
I'm good. Yesterday we nearly banned all Garys from the show. I don't know if you heard about that.
Well, I'm disgusted. I'm ashamed. But yeah, no, absolutely.
But you've made it through the filter somehow, Gary.
Well, I'm a good Gary.
Oh, you're a good Gary. I can tell already.
I'm an angry, middle-aged white man.
Yeah, you and me both, mate. Yeah, it's not good, is it?
But,
what are you making of all of this with flags? What do you think? What do you think's behind it?
So what I think behind it, in my view, it's a statement, and it's a statement of hope. A hope which a lot of people thought wasn't there anymore. I think for 30 years we've been downtrodden as a people. We've been suppressed in wanting to be proud of our culture, our history. Yep. Even in the schools, they teach now, or have been teaching kids to be ashamed of elements of our history, and yet they don't educate the greatness of what this country's given the world. Yeah. And I think that we've been suppressed, Ian, and I'll tell you what's happening now. There's been a pressure pot. People, and that lid's been taken off, and I think what you're seeing is a huge outpour in the 30 years of being downtrodden as British people, and the flags is the way that they are now bringing this all out of the pressure pot. And I think Mr. Neville's statement, and I won't say Gary because there are so many better Garys than that in the world, but Mr. Neville has probably now put another 20,000 flags up around the country. Well done, Mr.
Yeah, he might have been. Maybe he secretly works for the flag people.
Well, maybe, because he's just encouraging it. But I do genuinely believe this is an outpouring of decades of suppression of the British people, and this is the way they're showing it. I think it's a statement of hope that
it is, and that kind of it ties in with my theory about it being a message, if you like, to the establishment.
Absolutely.
And that, again, I absolutely agree with you. It's a sense of hope in this mad world that we live in, where
it is a mad world,
we are seeing all sorts of crazy decisions in the judiciary, and we see it in education, as you just rightly said, Gary, universities. We seen it in the establishment, across politics. Just really wacky, strange things that are going on. When we have rapists that can't be called out because someone's scared of upsetting diversity. When we have a group of young girls, 12, 13, found in the home of middle-aged men in the grooming gang scandal, and the girls are arrested and the blokes are left where they are because somebody doesn't want to upset the apple cart, you have to go, hang on a second, this surely isn't what diversity meant. That's not diversity, this is criminality. And, we want to get back to some, John Major called it back to basics. He might have been a weirdo, but I think he had a good point on that, and I'm with you. Gary, listen, I've got to move for no other reason than I want to get another voice on before the news. Great call, Gary. Call again, make sure you do. He's a good Gary from Wellingborough. Here's a good Kevin in Basingstoke. At least I think you are, Kevin. Good afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon. I'll have to be quick. I haven't got long, have I?
Go on, you got over a minute.
Yeah, I mean, flying flags depends on when you're flying them, doesn't it? I mean, they represent belonging and unity. When there's a royal wedding, or in sport, the Olympics and what have you. But when people are flying them, in some cases, they're sort of like hijacking the flag for extremism. And
that can happen, but that's always going to be the case, isn't it? Whether you're in Germany, whether you're in Poland, whether you're in England, wherever you happen to be, if you are of that persuasion, then you will always use your flag as your basic tool, right?
Yeah, but I mean, those people at the Tommy Robinson rally, they weren't talking about unity and coming together. They was talking about division and taking our country back and and sort of...
Yeah, some of the speeches there were pretty awful, to be honest. I think anyone would acknowledge that. But the average person that would have shown up there was there for very different reasons, and I think that's kind of the distinction. And I know it's often a hard sell when we're talking about, you know, the good flag wavers and the bad flag wavers, but I think that is the reality of where we're at, Kevin. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you. We'll also talk to Peter Cardwell, who's live in Manchester at the Conservative Party conference. We'll find out what Robert Jenrick was up to when he walked on stage with a wig like a ventriloquist puppet. And we've got the voice of doom. Here it is.
Nothing right-wing.
Who's that then? 87222 if you think you know.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. Lots to get through. We are, of course, still responding to the Neville debacle. It's not just Neville. Khan has pitched in as well. Not Sadiq, but Syra Khan, who is a former Loose Woman presenter. She essentially said the same thing as Gary Neville. It's kicked off a bit of a hullabaloo, and it gets into that territory of flags. What are your reasons for flying them or supporting the flying of them? We'll have details on that and more comment coming in from you. Also this afternoon, 2 years on from the October the 7th attacks, Keir Starmer has condemned pro-Palestinian protests taking place today. Can you believe it? As un-British. For once, he's right about something. Warning they incite hatred and exploit tensions targeting Jewish communities. Doesn't take a lot of working out how these things are allowed. I have no idea. He highlighted Jewish fears and rising anti-Semitism and called for respect and safety for all amidst the ongoing conflicts. More on that too. And Scotland Yard have dismantled a gang exporting 40,000 stolen UK phones annually in a £70 million theft operation. Raids have led to 46 arrests and 2,000 recovered phones as police urged Apple to introduce a kill switch which would combat combat the growing epidemic of phone theft. All of that and more. This one comes from Jenny in Tetney, which is in Lincolnshire, who says, just wanted to say, we've flown a flag on our flagpole in our front garden for years now. I've changed it at times for different celebrations. We mainly have the Union flag or the St George's flag. I was asked by my manager why I had the flag up once. That was when I worked for the council. We love our country. My husband was in the army, in the Remy. So was my dad in the Remy, actually. So has served our country. He wouldn't join now, she says. We have had friends question our flag from time to time, but now a lot of people are following suit. We need to be patriotic more than ever and speak out about the state of our country. We despair with this government and the last lot with the immigration for this country going out of control, both legal and illegal. We need to close the borders now and get our country back on track. It's not racist, it's not about colour, it's about looking after our country and people first. Let's get a robust immigration system in place with proper vetting so we know who we are letting in. Enough is enough. Jenny says we need Farage as soon as possible. Great listen all the time. Thank you, Jenny, for that. 5 minutes after 3 o'clock. Let's move to this story then. The Tory party conference continues. We've got Robert Jenrick blasting activist judges. This feeds into it, what we're talking about here, and pledged to abolish immigration tribunals and restore ministerial judge appointments, celebrating British icons like Aberdeen Angus beef. He slammed Labour, drawing comparisons to Thatcher. Let's have a listen to what he said in his keynote speech.
Today I've uncovered dozens of judges with links to Open Borders charities who take to social media to broadcast their Open Borders views, who spent their whole careers fighting to keep illegal migrants in this country. Some even continue to do so whilst astonishingly serving as judges. It's like finding out halfway through a football match that the ref is actually a season ticket holder for the other side.
That is Robert Jenrick. There's a lot going on there. Peter Cardwell, our man, of course, from Talk, is there at the Conservative Party conference and, of course, a former special advisor at the Ministry of Justice, so we can get some comment on that as well. Give us an overview first, Peter. What's it feel like? What's the vibe? Is it too exciting, as Lord Frost said yesterday? How's it looking in Manchester for the Tories?
Well, certainly a little bit quieter than last year, but not too much quieter. There's been all sorts of speculation that actually no one's here. That is not the case. There are many of the party faithful here. They're optimistic. But the question a lot of people have been saying, are people staying for the whole time? Usually, when the party's in government, certainly, and at Labour, you go on Sunday, you stay until Wednesday. A lot of people leaving early, perhaps, and it'll be very interesting to see when Kemi Badenoch makes her speech tomorrow whether there's a full hall. There was a full hall for Robert Jenrick today, and as you were saying, he said some pretty punchy things there, Ian.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting if more people turned out for Jenrick than the leader of the party.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see that. It'll be fascinating to see what happens tomorrow. I mean, it's interesting when people come here, and you've got to remember that party conferences, they're midweek. People are paying for expensive hotels, often transport as well. They're taking time off work sometimes. For some people will spend as much on a foreign holiday as they will coming to Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem or whoever party conference. So this is a big thing for many people. So the leader's speech is usually the best attended. It's usually standing room only. It'll be really interesting to see what happens tomorrow with Kemi Badenoch. She's got a lot to do. It's the 3rd of November, so not long now until the first point by which a move could be made against her with letters of no confidence. There's no suggestion that would necessarily happen, although perhaps a few have gone in already. There's been some reporting around that. Most people, the smart money, say that she's safe at least until the local elections, but certainly if there is blood to be scented, we can scent it tomorrow. I'm not scenting it today, I must say.
Yes, we will watch with interest. Let's go back then to what the Shadow Justice Minister had to say. You know a bit about this world, as I mentioned at the beginning. Peter, you were a former special advisor at the Ministry of Justice. Back then, and it wasn't a million years ago exactly, but back then, was there talk of activist judges even at that point?
Oh, certainly, and actually we remember in regard to Brexit, we remember Enemies of the People, that famous front page of the Daily Mail. Certainly when the prorogation happened, there were all sorts of allegations of activist judges with Lady Hale, Brenda Hale, and so on. So there are all sorts of issues about independence of the judiciary. But really on the asylum issue, that has ramped up to a huge degree, especially with the Bell Hotel, some of the judicial decisions around that, and one Court of Appeal judge who was before he became a judge, for many, many years a member of the Labour Party. He was a Fabian. He was someone who was a part of a Labour legal group as well. And you've got to say, hold on a second here, we're not saying people can't be members of political parties, but is the judiciary actually independent? Are they making decisions completely on the law rather than their own biases? And no one is completely unbiased in any way. So certainly what Robert Jenrick is trying to do is say, look, there are people here who are part of groups or have been part of groups previously where they're actively lobbying and putting forward the case for migration. How should those people then be seen as independent if they're making decisions about this? We've also seen loads of controversies, especially in regard to a body called the Sentencing Council, which both Robert Jenrick and Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, have been very clear about. She used to be the Justice Secretary and she got moved in the recent reshuffle. The Sentencing Council made a decision to put forward guidance saying that in sentencing decisions in the pre-sentencing report, that people's ethnicity should be brought into question and should be part of the decision-making process. Now that's something that Jenrick went mad about and was very, very annoyed about, and Shabana Mahmood was as well, but it's an independent body, and it took the government actually to threaten a new law before they changed their decisions. So really it's fascinating that there is so much power within the judiciary. Abolishing the Sentencing Council is something Robert Jenrick says he will do. He also says many of the big constitutional reforms that Tony Blair brought in 2005, abolishing to some degree many of the powers of the office of Lord Chancellor, for example, well, that's something Jenrick says he would restore if he got into government.
The problem I've always wondered this with judges. You know, judges, before they were judges, were usually, fairly senior prosecutors or defenders. And I've often wondered, if you were a very well-known prosecutor, who really did give it both barrels in that kind of George Carman kind of way in a courtroom where everybody knew and stopped and listened when you spoke, and then you become a judge, could you not then be accused of being an activist judge because you're very right-wing when it comes to crime?
Yeah, certainly, and those allegations are often made. We know, and we've seen many, many examples in the justice system that many people think is two-tier. I'm one of them. That we've seen some judges will give very light sentences for very serious crimes, and some will give very serious sentences for crimes that are less serious. So yes, there are always biases. There's nobody who's completely impartial. But the point is, you're meant to deal with the law as it stands, rather than your own personal prejudices. And if those personal prejudices, especially in a party political way, are absolutely clear for all to see and have been previously, well, Robert Jenrick is saying that should now be something that involves judges not being judges anymore.
So you wouldn't be allowed to, does that mean you wouldn't be able to have a past? Or you would, if you did have that past, you would just be precluded from becoming a judge?
I think so, yes. I mean, it'll be interesting to see exactly what the policy is when time comes on. But essentially in his speech today, he was saying, look, if you are someone who's part of, Labour, a Labour group that is for asylum seekers, or alternatively a non-political group that is fighting for asylum seekers, and then you become a judge arbitrating whether asylum seekers stay in this country, well, actually that shouldn't be allowed, because your bias is very, very clear in that regard. It's not necessarily about not having expertise. It's not about knowing the law really, really well, although many of those people do. It's more about, has your bias been really clear, and if it is, should you actually be a judge in the first place?
And that's the trouble, isn't it? Because in theory, judges are meant to leave their politics at the door, much like good journalists.
And some do.
And some do, yeah. You're right. Because the image we always used to have of a judge is that they were probably an old landowning Tory. That was always the archetype, if you like. Now we have a very different view of judges, that they're all lily-livered left-wing do-gooders.
Some of them are, certainly, and we've seen that from time to time. And I think what people want, I don't know what you think, Ian, when you're talking and listening to people, a lot of our viewers and listeners, they just want fairness. They just want fairness in the legal system, the judicial system. If you're going to be arrested, arrest every single person who does the same thing, and don't arrest anybody who hasn't done something. You know, there are people who have gone to prison for long periods of time for sending tweets, for example. Now, some of that might be to do with incitement in the case of Lucy Connolly, for example, but she was sentenced to 31 months. Whereas there are people who, we know, for example, at the Bell Hotel, there was someone who was convicted of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old who was sent to prison for 12 months. Now, the fact is that judge could only actually send that asylum seeker to jail for 12 months. That was the maximum amount of power that they had. But people look at those two sentences and just think, hold on a second, we're not quite comparing apples and apples. It's slightly apples and oranges. But at the same time, it doesn't seem fair at all. And what Robert Jenrick is talking about, and Reform UK as well, is getting a bit more fairness into the system. And in fairness to Shabana Mahmood, when she was Justice Secretary, she was talking a bit about that as well. Whether David Lammy will achieve that, I think, is an open question.
Just back then to Mr Jenrick and that speech, there's a lot of comparisons been made about things that Thatcher said. I don't think he'll be too worried about that comparison.
Well, it's Thatcher Central here in Manchester. There are loads. There's a whole stand which is basically Thatcher memorabilia. We've got it's 100 years since her birth. It's 75 years. Sorry, it's 25 years since 1975 when she became leader of the Conservative Party. And 3 of her dresses or outfits are here: the "No, No, No" speech, the Iron Lady, and the fatigues that she wore in that famous scene or the famous photograph where she was on the tank. So they're here, and I think there's a lot of nostalgia for Margaret Thatcher. So certainly there will be comparisons there, some of the language, although some perhaps a bit less favourable to Margaret Thatcher. For example, Geoffrey Howe, when he said about going out to the crease to see that your cricket bat is broken, and there was a little bit of that, certainly, where in the clip you played, actually, where Robert Jenrick was talking about the referee's got a season ticket to the other team. There was sort of an emphasis there, but certainly any comparisons to Thatcher, and Kemi Badenoch certainly will not be batting those away at any point tomorrow. If there's any sort of comparison there, she will welcome that just as much as Robert Jenrick will, her rival, of course, a year ago, and possibly in future.
It's interesting. You know how much of a political anorak you are, don't you, Peter? When I saw that those Thatcher outfits in these sort of glass cabinets in the newspapers this morning, and when you can instantly name the occasion without having to look it up, you go, that's when she resigned. That was the tank. That was that. But listen, that's
we were leaving Downing Street for the last time.
The tear in the eye as she looked around at the photographer. A very moving moment, that, of course. I could even recite the last paragraph of her autobiography on that very point if you want me to, but I won't bore you. In terms of the conference, then, you said it's fairly buoyant. It's not too depressed. People aren't looking at this as they did not last year, but the year before, when they knew they were doomed, where it was a terrible atmosphere at the Tory conference. Has it risen in the temperature of optimism a bit?
Yeah, it was dreadful 2 years ago. I mean, it was chaotic as well because of the HS2 decision that everybody knew was coming, and it didn't come to the last day, and it was just an absolute chaos. Rishi Sunak's speech was a bit of a disaster, and they knew they were heading for defeat. Last year in Birmingham, at least there was a leadership contest on. There was a bit of optimism. There was a bit of where is this going to go? And then the huge shock, of course, when certain people were knocked out at various points, and we heard from the 4 candidates at that stage, and then it went on to the leadership the actual voting in the 2-week period. So certainly this one is a little bit more relaxed. There's definitely a sense of, where is the Conservative Party? Where is it going? Obviously it's tanking in the polls, doing really badly at around 16% at the highest level, 11% I've seen one of those polls in the lowest level. Reform UK obviously punching the bruise today with, I got a press release literally every 15 minutes to my inbox telling me about 20 different, 15 minutes, about 20 different councillors who have left Reform UK for the Conservatives. The big question is, tomorrow, will there be an MP, for example? Is that what they're going to, Reform UK are going to put out before Kemi Badenoch's speech? So there's definitely an uneasiness here in Manchester, no doubt about that, but it'll be fascinating to see how well Kemi Badenoch does tomorrow, or badly.
Can it change? I mean, most people don't watch party conferences, and most voters will never get to see certainly not the entirety. They might see a few headlines of Kemi Badenoch's speech, like all the other big leaders' speech. Does it make a difference? When the Gallup people and the YouGov guys come out and poll, will that speech make a difference?
It can make a difference. It is important. I mean, there are three ways it can go. If it goes really badly, you can go down even further in the polls, and the Conservatives have gone down in the polls under Kimmy Badenoch's leadership. If it goes okay, well then you maintain your flat line essentially.
Yeah.
Or if it goes well, then the polls can go up. There is a risk, but there's a potential reward as well. And it's also one of the few times that the leader of the opposition, it's different for government because we hear from the government all the time, it's different for the opposition, and for Kimmy Badenoch in particular, really Prime Minister's Questions is the only time she's kind of guaranteed a bit of coverage, guaranteed a clip on the main news bulletins at sort of 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. From the party leader's speech perspective, it'll be carried live by most of the networks, not all of them, but most of them, and there'll be at least a clip on basically all the bulletins in the news. Her central message can get out there. So really, the speechwriters, talking to one of her speechwriters actually earlier in the day, behind the scenes, they will be looking for that little clip. They'll not just be thinking about the sort of 45 minutes or to an hour of the speech that they're writing. They'll be thinking about that. What's the 20 seconds that we want, or even the 10 seconds we want on the bulletins, and not just the big ones. You know, people think it's the big networks, it's the BBC 10 o'clock news. Well, actually, it's our network, it's Virgin, it's all the ones. It's for people, especially music stations, that often people don't think about politics. They might just think about Kimmy Badenoch tomorrow because they'll hear a little bit from her, and maybe that might change their attitude to Kimmy Badenoch, which is not a good attitude from most, or not a positive attitude certainly from most people at the moment.
Yeah. And one of the highlights, I am told, just a final point, Peter, is that apparently you can buy your book as well at the Conservative conference. I know there was a stall there, not to be confused with other radio presenters that might be flogging a book about Thatcher. This is one that's this is like genuinely researched, beautiful, funny as well, and it's out there now at the conference. Everyone's talking about it. Your book. Remind us of the title, Peter.
The fiver's in the post, Ian, that's very kind. It is called Political Animals. It's out at the moment. I've just done a signing, actually, which was a slightly surreal experience, to be honest. Really enjoyed that, and yes, it is out now. And all I would say is Christmas is just around the corner.
Yeah, what a great stocking filler. Peter, thank you as ever. Peter Cardwell, talk presenter, of course, up there covering what is going on at the Conservative Party conference, and a coincidence, but handy for this. Back in the day, he was a former Ministry of Justice Special Advisor, which ties in rather interestingly with the keynote speech from Robert Jenrick today, as he's the Shadow Justice Secretary. Back to the phones in just a second. Greg, bear with us, don't go away. With you in a moment. More comment coming too. 3:20. This is Talk.
I remember my little girl, she was 14 at the time, screaming that she's seeing her brother being abducted over the Instagram. He was barefoot, he didn't have his glasses on. Hamas terrorists were all around him, beating him up. As a mother, to see your son in this position, and you can't do anything to help him. The camera was so close to his face that you can see that his mouth was so dry that he was terrified.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just briefly, before we go back to the phones, Voice of Doom. Did anybody get it correct? This was the mystery voice. Have a listen.
Nothing right-wing.
These are some of the guesses. Alistair Campbell. Campbell always comes up in these things, as does Dominic Grieve. Both wrong. Barry Gardner, Jackson Carlaw. No idea. Mark Drayford. Wasn't he First Minister of Wales, I think, at some point? Patrick Spencer, Michael Fabricant, Nigel Evans, Russell Findlay, Jonathan Brash. I'm sure some of these are just mates' names that we're reading out. That's the usual drill, isn't it? Robert Buckland. All wrong. However, can we hear the voice again?
Nothing right-wing.
We have got a couple of correct answers. Peter Fletcher and Malcolm in Newport. Correct, it was John Reid. You may remember John Reid under the Blair administration. Had an incredible This guy started out as an absolute communist back in the day. He was a proper... He was right there when it came to communism back in the 70s. Ends up being the Home Secretary, Secretary of State for Defence, Secretary of State for Health. He was the Leader of the Commons. He was Secretary of State for Scotland, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. He must have held more portfolios than anyone. And he was a right old bruiser by the end of it. A right old bruiser by the no-nonsense Home Secretary, probably to the right of anything that the Tories were in the subsequent time they got into power. But there it is. John Reid was the answer. Well done to Peter and Malcolm. We'll have a brand new one tomorrow. Back to your calls. We're talking flags, among other things. Greg is in Windsor. What have you got for us, Greg? Good afternoon.
Hello. Good to speak with basically, I just wanted to paint a picture for you and for your listeners.
Yeah, please do.
What it was like being a kid in South Africa and receiving a letter for my birthday from my gran in Scotland. And what a joy it was to get that pale blue airmail letter with the British flag on it.
Wow.
And for us in South Africa to open a letter and to get a £5 note or just a tenner, if you were really lucky, all those years ago. It was a lot of money, and we were just absolutely taken with football teams, freedom of speech, and justice. This overwhelming sense of justice.
Interesting.
And the United Kingdom was Great Britain. And I didn't understand the difference between Great Britain and the United Kingdom. And when I came here in 1986, I went and lived with my gran up in Scotland and then came down, got a job for a Middle Eastern royal family looking after their estate. And so they were Muslim people. And I've just watched this pride, this sense of honor, of justice, of freedom of speech. I could not believe, Ian, what I heard when I went to Speaker's Corner, and I watched comedians standing up on TV, Channel 4. I went on Kilroy Silk's program about Salman Rushdie, and I could say what I wanted.
Yeah.
And now I don't think I could get away with that.
Isn't that interesting?
Ian, everything for me, I'm a late learner. Everything for me is epistemology, which means how you know what you know. It's a fancy way of saying how you know what you know.
What was the phrase you used? Whichology?
Epistemology.
Epistemology, yeah, indeed. Okay, yeah. The knowledge of knowledge, basically.
The knowledge of knowledge, how you know what you know. And my father was Jewish, my mother was Scots, and I grew up in South Africa. My dad told me how he was beaten up when he was at school for being Jewish. It was a sense of Jews always on the outside. Jews, blood libel, Jews rule the world, they control the finances, all of these lies. But I read the Quran recently. I've read it twice now in the last few years. And there's one surah and an ayah which says Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures. And I thought about it, and I thought, why is it so easy to ban books and ban people from coming into this country? We've had Christians banned from coming into this country. We've had Geert Wilders banned from coming to this country. There's a whole lot of people that have been banned, and so we prevented freedom of speech. And yet, in the actual source of epistemic knowledge for 1.6 billion people worldwide, I'm not saying the Roman Catholics are much better. They've all got weird stuff going on, but when you get to a phrase saying Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures, kill them, and of course they try and cover it up saying you don't know Arabic. For me, this should be banned. The book should be banned. It's hate speech. And how can you get away with
I'm not going to defend that. I know that people say that if you look through all the good books, you know, the Bible, you'll find weird stuff in there. Might be Old Testament related, but it's in there. And wherever you look, you can either interpret or blatantly see something that is, you know, a little bit eye-watering when you think about it literally. What do you say to that?
I challenge that. Jesus said, love your neighbor. The Old Testament, there are scriptures in there where different tribes who prevented passage for the Jews going through their land. There are different tribes which, you know, that's the can of worms, to put it mildly, because everything boils down to hermeneutics and how you interpret things. But for me, to chant a meaningless slogan and to have millions of people following you for chanting a slogan, especially today. I feel ill today. I haven't been able to eat today because the 7th of October is absolutely... I feel ill that there are people celebrating this and that there are people laughing at this. There are people rejoicing in
I mean, I don't even know where to start with that. It's almost a new one on me, of all the kind of weirdness we see and the kind of this what often appears to be a bizarre sort of upside down, topsy-turvy world that we're living in. The celebration of the death of hundreds of people on October the 7th is that's almost in another place, that a place I've never had to previously visit or think about, but it exists, and it's there, and it's happening right now. And we saw the video imagery of the woman cutting down the ribbons, which were there to remember either hostages still not returned or dead but not returned, babies, children. I mean, the list goes on. And what place have we arrived in when, in that land of plenty that you remembered as a kid, Greg, of free speech and fairness and justice, and getting that airmail letter from your auntie in Scotland, suddenly here we are in the same country with people popping the champagne to celebrate the death of Jews.
You know, I want to thank you, Ian, you, Julia Hartley-Brewer, Douglas Murray, people of your ilk, because I got a book recently in a charity shop called The Elements of Journalism by Bill Kovac and Tom Rosensteel. It's an old book. And on page 12, it says what journalism's first obligation is. Journalism's first obligation is to the truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, I look down the list of 9 things that journalists should stick to. But I just want to hear journalists getting to the truth. And when you expose the truth, when you make everyone aware of it, and people reject it without evidence, people reject what you're saying and they go, it can't be true. I mean, you had a caller earlier on which was saying things about flag waving, that he's never met a nice person flag waving. What utter nonsense. I went on the march. I only did Blackfriars to Waterloo and then I had to leave. But on that march, I spoke to...
You probably met some of the most delightful people waving flags, I would guess.
Absolutely. And, you know, my two friends, my best friend is a Tamil and my other friend is a Malawian. And these two men are such wonderful people. One of them's a doctor, and the other one's got 2 degrees. One of them being an MBA. They're not silly people. They're not moved by the wind and tossed around. These are people that scrutinize the evidence, and they will listen, and they will say, right, let's dig deep. Let's get all the answers before we start speaking, before we take a view, before we take a side. And that's what you and Julia are doing. And for a lot of us Jewish people and us Christian people, because I'm both, what I'm saying is for a lot of us, you're kind of the front line.
Yeah, and the trouble is today, you mentioned about truth, and journalism should be about the truth. People have multiple truths these days, which is a curious place to be, because there's really only one. There's multiple opinions, but there's only one truth. But that, again, is testament to the weird upside-down world that I just referred to. Greg, I've got to move for no other reason than time. Thank you for your lovely comments and a really engaging call as well. And I love how you began that story about how you looked from afar to this great land of ours, and how, well, time hasn't always been kind to the UK. Blame politicians every day of the week. 0344 499 1000. Shadow Defence Secretary Marc Francois joins us in a couple of moments' time. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
20 to 4 now. Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge blasted Nigel Farage for blaming NATO over Ukraine and praised the Tories for arming Kyiv. He slammed Labour's defence plans as unrealistic, accusing them of fudging spending figures, and argued strong defence needs a strong economy. On this very point and beyond, let's speak to Marc Francois, MP, Shadow Defence Minister. Good afternoon to you, Marc.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. We're asking really anyone who's at any conference this year the same question. What's the mood like there? I know some people have questioned that it could be too positive, but how is it looking? Are Tories on the up?
Well, there's a poll out this morning that shows we've just gone up slightly, so I think we are. It is pretty upbeat. You know, the way that these conferences work is they sort of develop momentum as you go on. Very good speech from Robert Jenrick this morning, very good one from James, and then one from Priti this afternoon, and obviously we're looking forward to Kemi's speech tomorrow. So I think it's definitely an up arrow, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Priti Patel, you just mentioned her there, talking about the world entering a new and dangerous chapter in our history. I mean, is she talking about the Middle East? Is she talking about Ukraine, a bit of both or beyond?
Well, you know, to some extent, the skies are darkening. You know, we've got all of the problems in the Middle East, and we have a war in Ukraine. Putin, despite all of these warm words with Trump, hasn't agreed to a ceasefire, has he? He's still coming, you know, one village at a time, at immense cost. But, you know, he could end that war tomorrow, and he hasn't. So I think we need to be really clear-eyed. We're dealing here with a man who was a former colonel in the KGB. This bloke is not a Boy Scout. He will keep coming unless we can arm the Ukrainians sufficiently to stop him. And all of our history shows, again and again, I say this as the son of a D-Day veteran, we must never ever take living in a free country for granted. My boss, James Cartledge, reiterated the point today. The first duty of government, above all others, is the defence of the realm, and that's why we wanted to make that point very strongly this afternoon. And we were privileged to have a man called Paul Young, who's the official spokesman of the Northern Ireland veterans, come to the conference today to make a point about Labour's plans to throw Northern Ireland veterans to the wolves. When Paul was introduced to the hall, they instantly stood up in applause, and rightly, because if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of our soldiers for decades in Northern Ireland, we'd never have had the Good Friday Agreement in the first place. So it was good to see that love for the armed forces acknowledged in the hall this afternoon.
And defence, of course, has always been, you know, a big strong point for the Conservatives. Even when things had got wobbly, you know, the Tories often still came out on top when it came to who do you trust with defence. And I noticed James Cartledge, Shadow Defence Secretary, gunning for Nigel Farage on this point, because I know that, you know, Farage flies a very patriotic message throughout all of his speeches. And James Cartledge really trying to shoot his fox on this one, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, look, we've actually compiled figures about the number of times since the election when we've debated defence and related matters like the Chagos Islands, you know, Labour's bonkers £35 billion deal, how often reform, even any reform MP, has said anything during those debates in the Commons. And the actual answer is not very often. So, you know, reform tend to focus on a number of issues, obviously on immigration, but they don't really do defence. They haven't even got a defence spokesman. So you know, that seemed, I mean, Nigel was a friend of mine, we go back a long way, but on defence it doesn't seem to be, judging by their contributions in Parliament, something that they take a particularly strong interest in. I think, in fairness, it's something we've always taken a strong interest in, and we still do, and the fact we're campaigning so hard in defence of our Northern Ireland veterans is one example. What your viewers may not know is there could be a crunch vote in Parliament before Christmas on a Labour motion, one, to reopen all these this conveyor belt of inquiries into our servicemen, but secondly, incredibly, to allow Gerry Adams to sue the British taxpayer. That's Starmer's policy. We're going to fight that tooth and nail, and I hope Reform will join us.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly watch with interest. Of course, key to the conference, a wider point, final point, Mark. Tomorrow, it's the keynote speech of the leader. Kemi Badenoch's got her work cut out, hasn't she? Look, leaders' speeches don't often get through to every household in the country, but they are important for Westminster political establishment, for confidence in the party. She's got to prove something tomorrow, hasn't she, to her own party, not just the country?
as you saying, you know, it's a big opportunity. You know, it tends to get a lot of media coverage. I don't know what's in Kemi's speech. I've been told it will be pretty punchy. I'm sure it will. But we've tried at this conference to lay out specific policies on things like borders and immigration. I'm delighted we've decided we would leave the ECHR. You can guess my views on that. You know, we've laid out ways to reduce public spending. We've come up with really specific policies that we can now go to the country with, and I hope and believe that Kemi's speech tomorrow will be, if you like, the culmination of all of that work.
We will watch with interest, and of course we're covering it here on the programme. Mark, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir. Mark Francois, Conservative MP for Rayleigh and Wickford. He is, of course, also Shadow Defence Minister too. Back to your calls and comments. This one in from Simon in Devon. Reference the flag topic. All of this kind of does dovetail into each other in many ways. There's a kind of bit of a theme throughout the issues we've discussed today. He says, you've nailed it. It's a pushback. We asked the question, what are the reasons for flying the flag or supporting people flying the flag, as we've seen on lampposts and gantries and places where they ordinarily wouldn't be. Simon says, you've nailed it. It is a pushback and a reminder to the globalist governments of the UK, past and present, that we, the indigenous silent majority of this country, are still here, living on these islands. And would you be so kind as to stop giving our country and its heritage and traditions away? Stop selling us down the river to other nations and cultures. Stop flooding the country with third world migration, who have more kinship with their own homelands than ours. I could go on, but you get my point. Have a great day. Simon, thank you very much indeed for that. The last point that Simon made there is really crucial to this, because he said this: stop flooding the country with third world migration. Now, there will be the left-wing meerkats who will hear that and go, what's it, flooding the country with left-wing migration, third world migration? What are they talking about? No, that's just a statement of fact. OK, that's not even controversial. But we've been taught over the years to believe, and I know commentators and politicians who will still argue the point, that what Simon just said is controversial. You can't say that. No, you really can say that. Other than desperate refugees, and that's a kind of given, that's the British way, we have no interest in people from third world countries, absolutely none whatsoever. There is no good can come of that. OK, might be absolutely thoroughly nice, beautiful people. That isn't the question. The question is cultural assimilation, zero. Contribution to economy, zero. That's usually going to be the case. People don't like to say it out loud, and when somebody does, you will get the left go, I can't believe you just said that. There's nothing controversial about saying that. And we've got to get our heads out of our backsides, or those that float these ideas that it's a little bit racist. I've got to get their heads out, see the sunlight, give it a wobble, and just have a new recalibration of what is real and what is not. What Simon said there is a perfectly legit, fairly normal thing. I don't know anyone sensible that would disagree with it. 0344 499 1000. Kish is in Greater Manchester. Kish, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
I thought long and hard about this over the course of your show. What we need is, I think, a union flag-waving tribunal to determine whether somebody's flying it for the purposes of decency or division.
Good point. It'd be a popcorn moment in the public gallery every day, wouldn't it?
Well, with Gary Neville as chief prosecutor, I think,
that's right.
We'll need to build a few more prisons, I think. I mean, it's tongue-in-cheek, obviously, but it's ridiculous, this stuff. I mean, it's OK for Keir and his cronies to wave the British flags of all colours and sorts at their conference, but if somebody waves it on the street, it's divisive. Yeah. I think about it from my own perspective as well. Just got myself a Union Jack bandana the other day. Now I've got brown skin, so do I get a free pass? Is that what it is? I don't get questioned about it.
Well, you would be. I think you probably know this anyway. I don't need to teach you this, Kish, because you would probably be seen as worse than one of those middle-aged white angry men.
Well, what I'll do is I'll line up my expert witnesses and my DNA analysis and I'll make sure that I practice a lie detector test, you know, for the purposes of said tribunal. I think I'll be all right.
Well, you should be all right, but you could go to jail, of course, and then, you know, I mean, I'll come and visit, don't worry.
Oh, please do, please do.
I'll
welcome.
I'll be the bloke in the Union Jack suit. You won't be able to you won't be able to miss me.
You'll add on a few more years to my sentence. That'll be nice.
Yeah, there you go. Kish, thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. Mark says, I can't comprehend why anybody wouldn't love and have pride in their own country, let alone actively hate it. The mindset just doesn't compute. It doesn't compute. This is why people are going a bit nuts and a bit crazy. And of course, there are mad people on all sides of these arguments. But have a measured debate. Don't let anybody tell you this country hasn't lost its way a bit. Doesn't mean to say we're completely knackered. It doesn't mean to say we're beyond rescue. It just means, I think there's certain pointers, certain kind of accepted directions of travel, certain expectancies. They've just gone out the flipping window the last few years. And you wake up and you read a story, you know, on somebody's door being knocked down because of a tweet and stuff like that. And people being ignored of horrendous crimes of sexual abuse because somebody doesn't want to upset diversity. People celebrating on the streets because a synagogue has been attacked by a terrorist. And the second anniversary of what happened on October the 7th. It's kind of all of that. You put that together and you go, well, yeah, we're confused because I don't think any of those things would have been the case 50 years ago. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Hamas terrorists were all around him, beating him up. As a mother, to see your son in this position, and you can't do anything to help him. The camera was so close to his face that you can see that his mouth was so dry that he was terrified.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Back to your calls. Matt's in Cheshire. How you doing, Matt?
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon. What have you got for us?
Firstly, can I mention brand names at all?
It depends in what context. If you're going to libel someone...
No, I've got a top quality Habitat Union Jack quilt cover and pillowcase set. So if anyone's thinking of purchasing one...
Have you really?
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. It's really, really good. I've got two.
Do they still do it, the Habitat people? Do they? Because aren't they in... They were in Homebase, weren't they, Habitat?
I got it from inside Sainsbury's.
Yeah, some sort of Argos connection.
So I'm just letting you know.
Doing a lot of product placement here, aren't we?
Yeah, I'll shut up about
Argos, Sainsbury's, Tesco.
Sorry, yeah. The Union Jack is the best flag aesthetically, hence the quilt cover, symbolically, and represents power. And then I put real power in inverted commas.
It is a really good flag, actually, isn't it? I mean, even, you know, this debate aside, it's objectively a good flag. It's a strong, bold flag. Yeah.
It's just the best flag. When I was young, all over the world, people looked at the Union Jack as one of the coolest things they'd ever seen. Yeah. Even in South America, in India. It represents fairness, common decency. Mm-hmm. When you have soft politicians, all you have left is soft power. And you don't need a massive military to show strength. And the Union Jack represents strength, real strength. And one final thing, I worked at the Commonwealth Games in Manchester in 2002.
Nice.
And there were 50-odd countries from all around the world that came to the Games. And all of them had respect for Britain. And unless you've been in that situation where people are coming from all over the world to basically turn up at the Queen's games,
yes,
you don't realise how many people respect Britain.
Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful when you see it like that. And I don't think that's entirely lost. I think it's been a bit diluted, or quite a lot diluted over the years. Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. Carl in Shrewsbury says, I spent 25 years in the infantry, left in 2020. I put my life on the line numerous times for the Union flag. I've had good friends die serving the Union flag. Some have lost limbs serving the Union flag. Yes, I'm white. I have a bald head. I have a beard, but I will not have anyone tell me I'm a racist because I'm patriotic. Sometimes I wonder why I did put my life on the line, but then I remember these clowns wouldn't be able to protest the way they do if it wasn't for people like me doing so. But they're still oxygen thieves and show a complete lack of intellect, and they can demean the flag of this country to be a racist symbol. Great show. Carl, brilliantly put. What a great message to finish on.
Amazing. Well, I upset Gary Neville and quite a few people yesterday.
Yes. Well, was there any... You didn't tell the gag about his...
I've got one for you today,
Got a new one?
Yeah, I've got a new one for you.
Okay.
I'll let you see this whilst I'm talking. Gary Neville... It's got a lifetime.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know quite how I'm going to go with saying that, but he's been given an award today. The Melon d'Or. Anyway, There we go. Listen, the Gary Neville thing yesterday, I felt really strongly about it. I just think it's outrageous.
What more you think?
You know, when I think that within the area that he was talking about in Manchester, you know, Jewish people were stabbed and murdered, and then a Palestinian Action March that's an illegal terrorist organisation allowed to march, and that bloody woman this morning, have you seen her cutting down those ribbons?
Oh, for God's sake.
Why is it, right? If you're trying to make an argument, why does nobody ever come out and say that is fundamentally wrong from a Palestinian point of view today? Why isn't somebody saying we distance ourselves from that woman? When we get told that we're being unfair to certain creeds and certain religions about immigration, why don't their leaders come out and say, rather than grooming gangs, why don't the Muslim community come out and say that is abhorrent? Why is it always that anybody who raises, you know, an argument about stuff that is completely... I mean, that woman today should be out... How is she not arrested in a heartbeat?
I have no idea. I know she's been, you know...
Lucy Conley went to jail. Why isn't she in jail now?
It's now known who she is, so I think she's going to struggle.
You know, you have to
She won't be going out on the streets.
Well, you have to think about all of our Jewish friends today and what what happened 2 years ago today, and
Of
it was
course you do.
abhorrent. And I think I find it extraordinary.
But what's really silly about it, Jezza, is you can wear two hats. You can say, I detest Israel, I hate Israel, I don't support the way they've responded. However, I do want to think of these people. You can think both things.
Yeah,
and that's the
I get that. I just think you have to look at Israel in what it is and what happened to it. It's 80 years.